Chapter 1207. Let's go, let's go. The village chief is waiting for us. Due to Poplar Fruit's magic and the little friend's welcoming of the little beauty Nina, they were delayed for a while. Poplar Fruit stopped at the right time and led the children across a stone bridge to the village chief's gathering place. Maybe it was because Poplar Fruit was so nice to her just now, but when Poplar Fruit tried to reach out his hand, Nina naturally put her little hand in Uncle Yang's palm. This feeling of being trusted was so good. Kiki walked in front of Poplar Fruit. The little girl's short skirt, pantyhose, and small leather boots were really beautiful today. However, she was muttering to her father, "Papa, Papa, I want flowers too." "Okay, but it will take a while. Let's go to the gathering place first. Daddy will make flowers for you later, okay?" Poplar Fruit said with a smile, holding Nina's hand with one hand and pulling his big suitcase with the other. The fathers had a clear division of labor. Poplar Fruit took care of the children, and Jun helped carry the luggage. He alone packed 3 big suitcases. "Okay." Kiki nodded happily. She immediately went to Nuyi, who was holding Nina's hand on the other side. She said, "Brother Nuyi, don't worry. My father is here. He will help take care of your sister." Nuyi nodded. The 2 children laughed happily, not feeling nervous at all. However, was it really going as smoothly as they had imagined? They gathered in front of the village chief. After a series of interesting self-introductions, the village chief began to talk about the difficult task that struck the children like a bolt from the blue. "We will welcome the first trip in the history of, where are we going, Dad?" Without the company of fathers, the village chief revealed the cruel truth without any warning. In fact, it was not without a warning. The question that the fathers asked in the car just now was a warning. Therefore, after the village chief began to speak, Poplar Fruit saw that Kiki was a little confused. He was secretly worried. However, the first one to explode with emotions was Xian, who had been answering questions in the car. At that time he replied, "When I heard this question, I was very touched, so touched that I wanted to drink Mimi." His answer was adorable. However, when he knew that he really had to leave his father and start a journey alone, Xian was the first to feel sad. He turned around and hugged his father, sobbing, "Dad, I don't want to leave you." It's okay. Be brave." Zhou Shimin was caught off guard and quickly comforted her. Poplar Fruit saw that his daughter's mood was starting to be affected. He quickly put a hand on his daughter's shoulder and said softly, Kiki, what did you say to Dad in the car? You're the elder sister now. You need to stand up and take care of your younger brother and sister, right? Who knows?" When she heard that Nuyi's father did not come, she felt relieved because she had her father with her. However, who knew that her father would also leave her side now? Kiki felt a little wronged, but she still nodded. The responsibility was still on her mind. Chi-Chi suppressed the tumbling emotions in her heart, walked over, took Nina's hand, and said, "Nina, don't be afraid. I'll take care of you." However, she had found the wrong person. Nina looked at Kiki in confusion. She was probably thinking, what difference does this change make to me? Yes, her father did not come at all. That was why the village chief said that the journey without her father would not change much for her. She was originally going to travel alone with her brother. "Kiki, go and comfort brother Xian." Poplar Fruit did not know whether to laugh or cry as he reminded his daughter. Kiki turned around. She was bursting with responsibility at this moment. "Dad, I don't want you to go." No matter how Zhou Shimin comforted him, Xian hugged his father's neck and cried bitterly. Xian, don't cry. Your papa is not here, but elder sister and other brothers will protect you." Kiki walked to Zhou Shimin's uncle. She faced Xian, whose face was wrinkled from crying, and reached out her white and tender hand to wipe Xian's tears. "Yes, Xian, don't cry. You'll become ugly if you cry in front of your sister." Zhou Shimin smiled and helped his son up. He let him sit on the suitcase and then took out a tissue to wipe his tears. Actually, Xuan's cries had stopped abruptly the moment Chi-Chi wiped away his tears. All that was left was the sobbing of habit. He pouted his lips, not wanting to embarrass himself in front of his sister. Xian, don't cry. You see, I'm not crying." Dajuan, a professional troublemaker, jumped out and shouted. He turned around and walked to the other side. Xian, hold hands. Kiki showed the demeanor of an elder sister. She reached out and held Xianxian's hand. Then she said, "Let's complete the task together. Even if father is not here, your sister will be by your side." Poplar Fruit looked at his daughter's performance and was a little surprised. When he first received the task description, Poplar Fruit thought that his daughter would be sad and cry. He thought that she would need to be comforted for a while before she would stop crying. He did not expect her to be so sensible. Not only did she not feel sad, but she also comforted her brother. "Yes, show me, okay?" Zhou Shimin smiled and stroked his son's head. Xianxian held Kiki's hand as if his whole body was full of strength. Xianxian raised his tear-stained face and said firmly and powerfully, "Okay, I want to protect my sister." She had completely ignored the phrase, "show off to daddy." He was the type who did not want his father when he had his sister. You should protect yourself first. You still need to protect your sister, Zhou Shimin said with anger and amusement. On the other side, Dajuan sat on the box and said happily, "Finally, I can be with the children. That's great." He really could not wait to get rid of his father. The village chief smiled and asked, "But father won't be with you. Aren't you sad?" "Oh, what's there to be sad about?" Xianxian said naively. "You'll see it when you choose a house." This was also Kiki's initial thought. Of course, she thought more about it. At worst, her father might come back later. Father is leaving, and he won't come back. The village chief said the truth even more cruelly. Suddenly, including Dajuan, the other children were a little confused. "Where are you going?" Dajuan asked. "Father is leaving. I can't see father." Lin Yongjian was a little unhappy that his son did not care about him. At this moment he could not help but say, "You can play here by yourself." The next chapter, there is an important drama. Chapter 1208. Lin Yongjian's words were like a knife that sliced through Dejun's thick mental defenses. Lin Yongjian's words revealed his true feelings under his expectant and sunny performance. "What? Daddy's not coming back? Why won't Daddy come back?" This question was also secretly echoing in every child's heart, including Chi-Chi. She blinked her big eyes, but there was no longer her usual cunning and intelligence. Only confusion and bewilderment remained. Why is there no father wherever father goes? Dejun was the first to feel sad. He tried to hide his sadness with his sunglasses, but when he wiped his tears, everyone saw his red and swollen eyes from crying. "Sigh, I have to be a firefighter again. If there's a fire here, I have to go there. If there's a fire, I have to go there." Poplar Fruit thought that his daughter would cry at this moment, just like how she burst into tears in the car when she was worried that he wouldn't want her. But Kiki didn't. She silently walked to Brother Dejun's side and held his hand. She didn't say anything, just silently accompanying him. Dejun's uncontrollable tears gradually calmed down. Even his father, Lin Yongjian, didn't say anything, and Kiki had already coaxed Dejun. Fortunately, there shouldn't be a fire anymore. Because the big brother, the fearless President Kong, coldly said to his father, I'll think of something." And Nuai and Nina were completely fine. Instead, Hujun even asked his junior brother's 2 children to take care of Kong Kong. "Kiki, you're awesome." Poplar Fruit called his daughter over, gave her a thumbs up, and said with a smile, "You have to keep this up. You're the most sensible child, and also the smartest and most capable child. You have to take more responsibility for these younger siblings, and also take care of your older brother. Although he's older than you, he might not be able to take care of himself. Okay?" Kiki nodded silently. The little girl's performance up until now was not bad. "Come, Daddy will tell you how to use the things in this box. Today you have to live alone, so you have to work hard." "Okay." Poplar Fruit carefully observed his daughter's expression, and found that it was okay. Although she was silent, the little girl was listening attentively. By the time Poplar Fruit finished talking about the contents of the luggage, it was time for him to leave with the other fathers, because the village chief was urging him again. "All right. Daddy is leaving. You must work hard and be strong. Daddy wants to see you be brave. Is that okay?" Poplar Fruit lowered the handle of the luggage and handed it to his daughter. He patted her shoulder and smiled. "All right." Kiki nodded gloomily. Then she gripped the handle of the suitcase and leaned on it unhappily, but her eyes were fixed on her father. Suddenly, Poplar Fruit felt a surge of sorrow in his heart, but he suppressed it. He had a feeling that something was going to happen. Poplar Fruit is leaving, Zhou Shimin said with a smile. The more you don't want to leave, the more they can't leave you. When you leave, you have to be firm, Hu Jun said. My kid doesn't care about anything. It doesn't matter if I'm firm or not, Lin Yongjian said self-deprecatingly. Hey Teacher Lin, you can't say that, right? Hu Jun laughed and said. At least your son is crying. My son's eyes didn't even turn red. I'm coming. Yonggwa suppressed the strange feeling in his heart and rushed over with a bag. Goodbye, dads. Under Nuoyi's lead, the children waved at the fathers who were about to leave. Goodbye. Even Dejun, who was still choking with sobs, waved goodbye to his father. Goodbye, take care of your sister. Be brave, be brave. Zhou Shimin waved goodbye to Xian Xian. Poplar Fruit also said goodbye to his daughter. Although it was just a goodbye, seeing his daughter's pitiful little eyes and seeing his daughter waving, but not saying goodbye, Poplar Fruit's heart suddenly trembled. I can't stay here any longer. Otherwise, I won't be able to leave her. Poplar Fruit gave his daughter an encouraging smile. Then he grabbed the bag with both hands and left with his father's group. When they reached the middle of the stone bridge, Poplar Fruit finally couldn't help but look back. It was just a glance, and he saw his daughter in the crowd. Unknowingly, the little girl's eyes had turned red. She was also looking at her father in a daze. When their eyes met, the emotions that had been brewing for a long time were finally about to explode. Papa! Suddenly, a cry that made Poplar Fruit's heart tremble even more violently pierced through the clouds. A small reddish-black figure pushed through the crowd and stumbled toward his father, who had already walked more than 10 or 20 meters away. At that moment, Poplar Fruit's eyes also turned red. He forgot about the damn program and turned around to run, tightly hugging his daughter who was running towards him. Woo 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 woo. The little girl was already sobbing. She pursed her lips and desperately wiped away her tears with her small hands. Poplar Fruit held his daughter's hand to prevent her from rubbing her eyes. Then with a slightly choked voice he said, Kiki, don't cry. Papa's heart hurts when he sees you cry. In fact, the father and daughter had been suppressing their emotions. Needless to say, Poplar Fruit didn't dare to cry. In order to fulfill her promise to her father, to take good care of her younger brother and sister, she didn't dare to cry. She reluctantly told herself that her father would come back. Kiki was the most sensible because she was too smart. Her IQ far exceeded that of other children of her age. Even brother Kong Kong might not be as smart as her. However, Kiki was only a 4-year-old child. When she saw her father turn around and leave, the panic and sadness that she had been suppressing for a long time all surged up. It was as if her father was really going to leave her. That kind of heart-wrenching pain turned into a heart-wrenching cry. The little girl was like a tearful person. She wept endlessly, but she still held on to her father's neck and said her inner feelings. I don't want you to not be here, woo-woo. Hearing his daughter's affectionate confession, Poplar Fruit couldn't help but tear up a few drops. However, he still forced himself to remain calm and said to his daughter, Papa won't not be here. Papa will always be here. It's just that this time, Papa needs to leave you for a while. I also need to do Papa's mission, so Kiki needs to learn to be strong now. Papa might not be by your side at night, but Kiki, you have to be obedient and sleep. When you fall asleep, Papa will come back in your dreams and tell you stories. Poplar Fruit said. As he spoke, his voice started to tremble. Perhaps he didn't feel it, but many of the audience sitting in front of the TV felt it. Regardless of whether they were male or female, they couldn't help but wipe the corners of their eyes that were still wet. Earlier, when Kiki was crying at the top of her lungs, everyone was already crying. Chapter 1209. Papa. You must come back. Kiki pursed her lips and continued to cry. Papa promises Kiki that after Papa completes the mission, he will come back to pick up Kiki as soon as possible. Poplar Fruit took out a tissue to wipe his daughter's tears. His emotions were much more stable now, and he began to coax his daughter. Just now, everyone, including the other staff members of the program team, thought that they could finally breathe a sigh of relief and wrap up the segment of the father and child farewell. However, they did not expect such a thing to happen right before they left. Chi-Chi, who had been putting out fires everywhere like a firefighter, actually exploded at the end. Only the cameraman in charge went over. Everyone was confused for a while in the wind, before they came to their senses. A few of her friends gathered around her. "Don't cry, Sister Kiki." Xian Xian, who was the first to cry, said in his unique hoarse voice as if nothing had happened. Xian Xian was still very considerate. He reached out to comfort Kiki's arm. "Yeah, Kiki, we will all take care of you. Don't be afraid." Dejun rubbed his red eyes and said. Seeing that Nuoi and Nina had also come over, Poplar Fruit smiled and pulled his daughter to turn around. He said, "Look, your sister is here too. You have to take care of her. Kiki, don't cry." Nui came over and held Kiki's shoulder to comfort her. However, Kiki still couldn't control herself. How could she care about her sister? Moreover, so many good friends were watching, but she was crying so miserably. Kiki was a little embarrassed and squeezed into her father's arms. Poplar Fruit could only help his daughter tidy up her hair that was a little messy from crying while comforting her softly. At this time, little Chuangshuan suddenly came over and whispered in Kiki's ear. Although he said it in a whisper, little Chuangshuan's hoarse voice was heard by everyone around. Poplar Fruit thought that this guy would say something to comfort Kiki, but he didn't expect to hear it. "Sister, don't be afraid, I'll sleep with you tonight. I will accompany you." Nuoi also stepped forward and mimicked Xian Xian. Little Fatty Xian was elated. He pulled Nuoyi's hand and said, "Let's sleep with her tonight, okay?" Poplar Fruit was stunned. They were trying to take advantage of the situation. "I haven't even left my daughter's side yet. What are you guys lining up to do to my daughter?" Of course, Poplar Fruit knew that the two children had good intentions. Therefore, he could only smile bitterly and not say a word. However, Kiki's mood was indeed much better after the children's banter. Especially after Nina, who had been following her brother all this time, summoned up her courage and walked over. Nina didn't say a word, but timidly reached out and stuffed her little hand into Kiki's. After realizing that it was her sister, Kiki hurriedly stopped crying and wiped away her tears. She didn't want her sister to see her weak side. Chi-Chi had finally been taken care of as well. The fathers all heaved a sigh of relief. They pulled Poplar Fruit and prepared to leave. However, before Poplar Fruit left, he secretly ran to the village chief's place and worriedly confirmed, "Village chief, our children sleep separately, right?" His question was mischievously shown on TV by the production team. Immediately, the audience burst into laughter. Poplar Fruit, who was often jealous of his daughter, was really adorable. The village chief held back his laughter and gave him a reassuring answer. Poplar Fruit then caught up with the rest of the group and got on the bus to leave. After getting on the bus, before the bus started driving, the fathers who got on first had already started chatting. "Are you crying?" Zhou Shimin asked Lin Yongjian in surprise, who was sitting by the window with a gloomy expression. "No, I'm just sweating," Lin Yongjian quickly denied. He even took off his glasses to wipe his sweat, but in fact, looking at his gloomy expression, everyone thought that he wanted to cry. Poplar Fruit definitely cried just now. "Poplar Fruit, right?" Zhou Shimin asked as he patted Poplar Fruit, who was sitting beside him. Poplar Fruit chuckled and nodded graciously. He said, "I couldn't help it just now. Your daughter screamed just now. We all wanted to cry." Lin Yongjian commented, "Poplar Fruit, among the five of us, you're the youngest, but I feel that you're the best father. At first, I just thought that Kiki was very sensible, but then I realized that your relationship with her is so deep. Can't be separated." "Of course not." Poplar Fruit modestly waved his hand. "Sigh, but Kiki and I really have a good relationship." Poplar Fruit seemed to be reminiscing about the past. He sighed with emotion. "When the nurse handed her to me when she was just born, I felt that I couldn't leave this little girl." Tossing and turning, ups and downs, the difficult days passed, the good days passed, and in the blink of an eye, she's already a slender and elegant 4-year-old girl. But really, we should separate for a period of time and let her face the world alone. Poplar Fruit was somewhat unable to continue. Your heart feels like it's being cut by a knife, right? Jun laughed, patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said, "It's okay. When I took care of Jio, I also walked through it like this. But sometimes as fathers, we have to be ruthless and appropriately let go of our hands." Poplar Fruit smiled gratefully and said, "Brother Hu, help me take a look. How are they?" Poplar Fruit didn't dare to look, afraid that he wouldn't be able to bear to leave. "It's okay. Look, no one is wiping their tears anymore." Jun looked for a while and said with a smile, "No. Our child is actually the best. As long as he has companions, nothing will happen to him," Zhou Shimin said with a relieved smile. Poplar Fruit couldn't help but stand up to take a look. He found that Kiki was really much better. The little girl was holding Nina's hand charmingly and no longer crying, but she would still look at the bus that the fathers were riding. Yes, there should be no problem. She has a strong sense of responsibility. Even without her father by her side, she will definitely be strong enough to complete the mission and take care of her younger siblings. Poplar Fruit suddenly felt gratified. He was happy for his daughter. "Driver, let's go," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "If we don't leave now, I reckon that they will continue to look at us like this. Once we leave, they will be fine. Let them play. Let them have some fun together as children. There will be a lot of fun things," Zhou Shimin said with a smile. "Definitely. It's okay," Jun said. The bus slowly started. Although the fathers all said that, they all looked closely at the children who were gradually disappearing from their sight. They were still a little worried in their hearts, but they believed that there was more hope. They hoped that the children would be able to have their own fun while their fathers weren't around. Chapter 12:10. The fathers had all left. The children held each other's hands or held onto their suitcases as they looked in the direction where the bus had left. It was time for the village chief to step forward and attract the children's attention. "All right, everyone." The village chief smiled and pointed at the huge earthen building behind him. "Look at this building. This is the building we will be staying in today. Do you know what it is called?" "Earthen building," Xian shouted. His father had mentioned the term earthen building to him when they were on the bus. "Earthen building." Jun and the other children did not back down and quickly answered. "There are 3 words on it," the village chief reminded them. But the children were silent. Kong might know, but he needed some time to decipher the words. After all, the words were written in calligraphy. Kiki was literate. She could recognize the words Spring Noble House at a glance, but she did not want to speak. Her eyes were still red. No one had expected Nuai to open his mouth. He even said firmly, "On it says, oh, Black Bear Cave." This child's mind was jumping around, and he was transported back to the scene of Journey to the West. What? Kiki was confused. She held onto Nina's hand, but the other hand that was holding onto the suitcase could not help but let go. She scratched her head and looked at the village chief in confusion. Did she really make a mistake? Black Bear Cave? The village chief, Li Rue, was also shocked by Nuoyi's imagination. He smiled and said, "What everyone said was right. This is the earthen building. And this is the most beautiful building inside. It is called Spring Noble House." When Chi-Chi heard this, she let out an obvious sigh of relief. Fortunately, she did not make a mistake. "We will be staying here today, okay?" The village chief smiled and said, "Let's go in and take a look." The children all nodded their heads, but Jun shouted again, "Village chief, the door is closed." "The door is closed? Then why don't you let the people inside open the door?" The village chief smiled, but he had no intention of going forward. He smiled mysteriously and stood behind with his hands behind his back. "Open the door, quickly open the door." The children crowded around the big wooden door. Some of them knocked on the door, while others knocked on it with a big metal ring. "Don't sleep in, open the door for us." After Nuoyi's antics, Kiki's face broke into a beautiful smile. She didn't continue to wallow in the sadness of her father's departure. On the contrary, Kiki was eager to join in because her friends were shouting so enthusiastically. She switched Nina to her left hand, and then squeezed her body onto Nina's. Her right hand pulled on the iron ring, making it clatter. No, you should call me that," Kiki's big eyes turned into crescent moons as she giggled. Kiki took a deep breath and imitated him vividly. Open the door, open the door. Don't hide in there, I know you're home. Open the door, open the door. Don't hide in there, I know you're home. Open the door, open the door, open the door. The little friends were all shocked. The village chief was dumbfounded, and the audience burst out laughing. Ayo, Kiki, our cutest and most innocent little princess, when did you transform into Auntie Shue? The audience was rendered speechless by Kiki's sudden transformation. However, it wasn't over yet. Under Kiki's lead, Xian Xian Nuai and Dejun all joined in the Auntie Shue version of shouting. Behind them, Kong Kong, who was sitting on a suitcase in the second row, was also eager to give it a try. However, when he saw the camera turn to him, he smiled and turned his head to the side. Nina, who was in the third row, had unknowingly broken away from her sister's hand. Not only was she not as shy as before, she seemed to have become inexplicably excited when she saw her sister and brothers shouting rhythmically and cheerfully. She waved her small hands and shook along with the rhythm, smiling so much that she couldn't close her mouth. Suddenly, the sound of a door bolt being pulled could be heard from behind the door. The children were so frightened that they immediately stopped shouting and quickly let go of their hands that were pulling on the metal ring and knocking on the door. With a sound of creak, the huge wooden door was pulled open by a gap of tens of centimeters. A woman in pajamas with a ferocious expression and with a lollipop in her mouth poked her head out. Her hair was tied up in a permed bun, and she had a lollipop in her mouth. All the children were so frightened that they staggered. They weren't frightened by the sudden appearance of the person, but by the woman's expression. Kiki subconsciously grabbed Dejun's hand, and behind them, Nina was also dumbfounded as she looked at this strange woman. She grabbed Kiki's skirt from behind, wanting to hide behind Kiki's sister. Who is it? What are you doing? Who are you? Why are you knocking on the door? This was probably the first time such rude guests had appeared since the first season of Where is Dad Now? Even Kiki, who could recite the first 2 episodes of Where is Dad Now?, had never seen such a scene. Moreover, it happened when her father wasn't by her side. Kiki really wanted her father at this moment. Yuan Kyongdan was a very famous actress in Hong Kong from the 1980s until now. Back then, she played the role of Sister Pomegranate, who was peerless and breathtaking in Stephen Chow's movie, Tang Bohu Dian Kik Siang. Her image was so deeply rooted in people's hearts that everyone affectionately called her Sister Pomegranate. However, Sister Pomegranate's appearance this time was in another movie of Stephen Chow's. She played the role of another Hong Kong celebrity, the landlady. When she first appeared, the audience was first shocked, then they burst into laughter. Oh my God! How did the crew of Where is Dad Now? However, Sister Pomegranate is really amazing. She actually acted out the landlady's tyrannical sarcasm and sarcasm so well. However, to the children this was not good news. That was because Sister Pomegranate was yelling at them. Who knocked on the door just now? Why did you knock? Who told you to knock? Sister Pomegranate scolded and questioned without taking a breath, which made the 6 children confused. Kiki was also a little scared, but her expression changed a little. From fear, to surprise, and now to a very strange doubt. Putting aside Kiki for the time being, under Sister Pomegranate's questioning, Dejun hurriedly pointed to the back and shouted, "Village Chief!" "Who is the village chief?" Sister Pomegranate shouted unrelentingly. "I don't know him." "Who knocked on the door?" Sister Pomegranate's purplish-red lips looked fierce. Xian Xian and Nuai were so scared that they didn't dare to make a sound. Dejun hurriedly went to find Brother Kong Kong, who was the oldest, and wanted him to stand up and say a few words. However, Kong Kong inexplicably sighed. He had no intention of participating at all. Chapter 12:11. Even though Dejun wanted to divert Sister Shirley's anger to the village chief, how could Sister Shirley, who had already colluded with the village chief, let them do as they wished? "I'm not asking you who knocked on the door. Who knocked on the door just now? Tell me." Sister Shirley questioned sternly. Immediately, the children quieted down. No one was willing to become the target of this fierce woman in front of them. "It's him." the youngest Xian, other than Nina, was the first to lose his composure. He instinctively dodged and pointed at Dejun. Of course, this was wrong, but a child who was not even 4 years old should not be held to the standards of an adult. Then he knocked too. Dejun pointed at Xian and Nuai. The two of them knocked too. Just these two? Sister Shirlu continued to ask sternly. Did you knock? I knocked. Dejun admitted readily. This made everyone look at him in a new light. Only 3 people knocked, right? Sister Shirlu shouted. At this time Kiki, who was deep in thought, was suddenly shocked by Sister Shirlyo's shout. She timidly raised her right arm and said, I knocked too. And then? Sister Shirlu looked at Big Brother Kong Kong. However, Kong Kong did something that no one expected. He actually pushed his small suitcase and walked to the side alone. He walked to a place where Sister Shirlu could not be seen, and sat down on the stone steps. No one knocked after that. The second eldest, Dejun, took on the responsibility of dealing with the fierce woman. To be honest, when I saw this, I suddenly felt that Dejun was a bold, responsible and loyal boy. He asked, Who are you? I've been waiting for you to say this for a long time. Sister Shirlu smiled proudly, and pushed open the door on the right. It was as if they had returned to the original movie scene. However, this time, her aura was stronger, more like a landlady with her tail up. Goose, wrong pronunciation, is the peerless beauty, admired by thousands, loved by all, and the flower blooming in front of her, Sister Shirlu. Sister Shirlu stroked her hair coquettishly, and completed the self-introduction. Of course, it also made the audience in front of the TV vomit a few pounds of meat. No one noticed that after hearing Sister Shirlyo's words, Kiki's eyes suddenly lit up. It was as if a meteor had flashed across her mind, and she caught it. Sister Shirlu was still proudly saying, I'm now called Shirlu Ai Auntie. But you guys can't call me Ai, Cantonese pronunciation. You have to call me Sister Shirlu, okay? Yes, Sister Shirlu, it's too easy. Dejun quickly followed. I don't think it's that simple. Xian and Dejun acted as if they were performing a crosstalk, making the audience laugh. I know. Kiki, who had been holding her sister's hand in silence, suddenly raised her hand. She had a joyful smile on her face, unlike the other children who were still a little nervous. What do you know? Sister Pomegranate asked curiously. I know, Sister Shirlu. Kiki was so excited that she was incoherent. She gestured with her right hand and said, I've seen Sister Shirlu before. Sister Shirlu is Sister Ife and Brother Jambua's mama. What was going on? Only those on TV who had seen the program crew's notes and searched for it, and those who had watched the series iPartment a dozen times understood what Kiki meant. Sister Shirlu had made a guest appearance in iPartment 3, as Hu Ife and Lu Jambua's mother, Yuan Chuanli. Kiki might not be able to call out Sister Shirlyo's real name, but she remembered Sister Shirlyo's name. That was because her father and mother had discussed it excitedly when they were watching the 7th episode. No wonder she looked so familiar. Kiki had always felt that she had seen this fierce auntie before. Little girl, have you watched the TV series that I acted in? Sister Shirlu was surprised. She knew that this was definitely not the program crew's arrangement, because they seemed to be caught off guard. I've watched it. My mama likes it a lot. Kiki giggled. She thought of Sister Shirlyo's image in the TV series, and didn't feel that Sister Shirlu was that fierce. After saying that, Kiki was still not satisfied. She even imitated it with a smile in her eyes. For girls, they look like China Merchants Bank. For boys, they look like China Construction Bank. She even memorized the lines. What kind of memory was that? The audience and Sister Shirlu were stunned. They exclaimed, Where's Poplar Fruit? Poplar Fruit, come out quickly. How did you give birth to a daughter? So evil? Call the police. That's right, that's the role I acted in before. But now, the person in front of you is Sister Shirlu. I'm very happy that you know me, so I'll allow you to come in. Sister Shirlu turned around and opened her arms domineeringly, pushing open the 2 old wooden doors. Come in. Sister Shirlu took the lead in an imposing manner, as if she was the fake leader who led the axe gang to kill the bamboo house. Unfortunately, because Kiki held Nina's hand and dragged her behind, Kong Kong sat alone at the side, and Xian Xian was simply cowering and didn't dare to come forward. Nui and Dejun took the lead and walked 2 steps, but when they looked back at their friends, they retreated to the door in dejection. This scene was more or less a little awkward. The children's real reactions indeed brought too many unknowns to this program, but also brought a lot of joy to the audience. This scene was very comical. Come in. Sister Shirlu had to go back and call the children in. Do you want your luggage? Who will help you carry it? Bring it in. The children hurriedly went in and out, struggling to drag their luggage inside. Nina, wait for me. Kiki had a suitcase about the same height as her, so it wasn't easy to drag it over the threshold of more than 20 centimeters. She softly comforted Nina, who was a little scared because of Sister Shirlu, and asked her to wait outside. You're a boy, don't you want to help a girl carry her things? Sister Shirlu called Dejun, who only had a backpack and was very relaxed. No, I can do it. Kiki choked. She grabbed the handle of the suitcase and lifted it with force. She lifted such a big and heavy suitcase and even flipped it over the stone steps. This strength was a little too amazing, wasn't it? The audience wondered if Kiki's suitcase was actually empty. Although Kiki's little face was flushed, compared to the other children who were dragging and lifting, Kiki looked much more capable. I'll help you. Dejun ran to help Xianxian carry his suitcase, and then Nui. The image of a warm-hearted and considerate little man was born. After moving the suitcase into the earthen building, Kiki didn't forget her new friend, Nina, who was outside the house. She ran out with her little leather shoes. Chapter 12:12. Most of the group had gone in, but there were still 2 children outside. One was Nina, and the other was Kong Kong, who was sulking alone outside. President Kong Kong was slightly older than the other children, and usually spoke like an adult, but in reality, President Kong Kong was also a child. Other than the others, Kong Kong also felt afraid when he saw the bad guys. In fact, his reaction was even greater than the other children's because he was thinking too much. He felt that adults shouldn't be so fierce to children. He couldn't help but feel dissatisfied with Sister Pomegranate. A stifling feeling in his chest was getting worse. However, at this time, Kiki's priority was Nuyi's sister, the youngest of the 6 children. Kiki ran out and happily held Nina's little hand. She said, Nina, let's go in. It's so beautiful inside. However, Nina didn't listen. She pursed her lips and shook her head. The little beauty looked a little unhappy. She even rubbed her eyes and looked like she was about to cry. What's wrong, Nina? Kiki was a little puzzled and nervous. She couldn't bear to see her sister cry. She hugged Nina with her little arms, just like how her father usually comforted her when she cried. She asked gently, Tell sister, what's wrong? She doesn't want to go in. Nuyi's voice came from behind. Nuyi had also come out. He pulled Nina out of Kiki's arms. At this moment, Nuyi was like an old hen protecting her chick. His hands were on Nina's shoulders to protect her. However, his action made Kiki feel a little abrupt. She also felt that he didn't trust her. He was clearly coaxing her, but you still came to pull her. Didn't you not trust your friend? Kiki pursed her lips and turned to walk into the earthen building. Kiki also had a temper, and it wasn't a small one. However, at this time, perhaps because she was in her brother's arms and had some support, she finally relaxed a little. Nina finally began to cry softly. Nina, don't be afraid. Nuyi wanted to pull his sister into the room, but Nina refused. She cried even harder. On the other end, Kiki, who was about to step over the threshold, stopped in her tracks. She glanced at Nuyi and the others and pursed her lips. Still, she turned back to hold Nina's hand and gently persuaded her. Nina, don't be afraid. Sister Shirlu is a very nice person. Yes, I'm a good person. I was just joking with you guys. Don't cry. Sister Pomegranate also appeared beside the children and asked Nuyi to let go of her hand first. She squatted down and hugged Nina to comfort her, saying, I only scold boys, not girls. Don't cry. That's right, Nina. Sister Shirlu was just joking with us. Kiki bent down slightly in front of Nina and wiped away her tears. She comforted her gently. Look, I'm not afraid anymore. And your brother, Your brother isn't afraid either. As she spoke, Kiki turned around and looked at Nui with a pout. He had made Kiki unhappy just now. She was still angry at him. Nui was a little confused. He nodded foolishly and said, "Yes, I'm not afraid. Come, be good. Let's go in. It'll be fine." Sister Pomegranate saw that Nina's mood had improved a little, so she held her hand and walked in. Sister. Nina looked at Kiki for help. She didn't know when her brother had turned around and ran to the other side. He was blocked by Sister Pomegranate and couldn't be seen. Nina was actually still a little scared when Sister Pomegranate held her hand. "I'm here. Nina, don't be afraid. Let's go in together. Look, your brothers are all inside." Kiki held Nina's hand from the right and went in with her. This way, Nina wasn't so scared anymore. When they returned to the place where her friends were gathered, and she returned to her brother's arms, Nina still wanted to cry. There was no reason. There was no reason for a child to cry or throw a tantrum. Perhaps it was because she saw Nui and felt that she had someone to rely on. Her grievances doubled again. "Don't cry, Nina. Don't cry, Nina." Nui hugged his sister and put his arms around her neck, wiping away her tears. This heartwarming scene moved many viewers in front of the TV, especially the girls who had Mary Sue stories. They all expressed that they were smitten by Nui. Chi-Chi, on the other hand, was a little unhappy. She thought that she could coax her younger sister to stop crying, because when she coaxed her just now, it actually worked a little. But every time Nui appeared, it made Nina cry even harder. Nui and Kiki might have different ideas in this aspect. Nui didn't know how to coax his sister, but he could always give his sister a strong support. Kiki would reason with him like how her father coaxed her, or use other things to distract her. One was, cry, cry. Cry out all the grievances in your heart. The other was, don't cry, don't cry. Actually, you don't feel wronged at all. It was hard to judge which method was better, but presumably for more girls, they preferred a brother like Nui. This was because they didn't need any general principles or persuasion. They only needed a brother to stand up for them when they were in danger, and someone to cry to when they were sad. On the other hand, Kiki's persuasion might be more effective on boys. Didn't you see how she managed to persuade the stubborn little radish, Dejun, to be obedient in the last trip? Alright, let's not talk too much about it for now. Nina might be able to calm down after crying for a while, but there was still a friend outside. There's one more. Isn't he coming in? Sister Pomegranate's words were like a wake-up call. Kiki, Dejun, and Xian looked at each other and realized that Brother Kong was indeed missing among them. "I'll go invite him." Sister Pomegranate walked out, and Kiki quickly followed behind. "We're going to close the door." Sister Pomegranate walked to the door, still wanting to scare the oldest child. Unexpectedly, Kong angrily slapped the wooden steps he was sitting on. Kong was very resentful. Thinking about it carefully, Kong's anger might not be entirely due to being scared by Sister Pomegranate just now. It should be due to the grievances of being left alone outside after his friends had gone in to help each other out. Kiki was also shocked by Brother Kong. She grabbed Sister Pomegranate's pajamas and timidly hid behind Sister Pomegranate. She suddenly felt that the Brother Kong in front of her was a little different from the otherworldly Brother Kong in her impression. "What are you doing? Come in, come in." Sister Pomegranate tried to get closer, but Kong was very resistant to her approach. He slapped the wooden steps, just like how people in ancient times used sound to scare beasts away. His eyes were wide open, and his nostrils were rough. He looked very scary, but in reality, his emotions were about to collapse. Chapter 12-13. What happened to Brother Kong? Kiki thought about it carefully. Actually, he was her good friend and there was nothing to be afraid of. Hence, she walked out and asked Sister Pomegranate carefully. At this moment, Kong could no longer hold back his emotions. He took deep breaths and couldn't help but start sobbing. Of course, he thought that he was holding back his tears. "I don't know either." Sister Pomegranate shrugged and tried to sit down. She said to Kong, "Alright, don't cry. Let's go in and take a look at the environment inside, okay?" "Go away." Suddenly, Kong Kong shouted at the top of his lungs, scaring everyone. It was also this shout that seemed to have used up all his energy. He started to cry for real. Kiki was originally standing far away. She was so frightened by Brother Kong Kong's shout that she almost turned around and ran back. However, when she saw Brother Kong Kong crying like that, the softness in her heart seemed to have been touched. The little girl turned to Kong Kong's left side and tried to pull Brother Kong Kong's hand. However, Kong Kong didn't let her move. "Don't bother about me." Kong Kong was also angry at Kiki. Kiki pouted and almost cried from Brother Kong Kong's scolding. She felt wronged. What was going on today? Daddy wasn't by his side to take care of his sister. However, Brother Nuyi didn't appreciate it and wanted to comfort Brother Kong Kong. In the end, he was coaxed. Kong Kong saw that he had scolded his sister and was actually a little embarrassed. However, at this moment, he felt even more wronged. He straightened his neck and turned his head away, not looking at Kiki anymore. At this moment, little Fatty Xian heard the commotion and came out to take a look. Just like what Zhou Shimin said in the car, little Fatty Xian was actually the most obedient and strong one when Daddy wasn't by his side. "Why is he crying?" Sister Pomegranate asked him, trying to find the answer from a child's point of view. "He misses Daddy." Little Fatty Xian thought for a while and said, was this question the real answer? Perhaps only Kong Kong knew. However, Kong Kong would never admit that he missed his daddy. Boss Kong Kong had always been a maverick. How could he not have the courage to be independent? "It's okay, don't be so angry." Sister Pomegranate still tried to comfort Kong Kong. "I don't care. I won't follow you." Kong Kong became more and more angry. He cried and shouted. And his nose was even running. Although the production crew used special effects to block it, everyone present saw it, including Kiki. Kiki was stunned for a moment. She quickly took off her pleasant goat bag and rummaged through it. She found the tissue that her father had put inside and took out a piece. On the other side, Kong Kong and Sister Shirlu were still throwing tantrums. "I don't believe you. Brother Kong Kong, let me wipe your nose for you." Kiki's timid voice was like the sound of wind chimes from afar, brushing away Kong Kong's boiling emotions. No, Kong Kong wanted to save face, so she raised her hands to resist. "Wipe it. It's so dirty." Kiki, who couldn't get over it, pouted unhappily, but she still wanted to force herself on it. She almost got the dirty thing under Big Brother Kong Kong's nose. The little girl knelt on the wooden steps with her long legs in pantyhose. She raised her left hand and pressed down on Kong Kong's arms. Her left hand was practically on Kong Kong's chest with two arms between them. Kong Kong didn't have enough strength, so he was pressed against the wall by Kiki. Then Kiki used the tissue in her right hand to wipe Kong Kong's nose. Kiki was very careful, wiping it over and over again. Kong Kong didn't know if it was out of humiliation, fear, or some other thoughts. He raised his head and stared blankly at Kiki's slightly pouted mouth. She was dissatisfied, but her beautiful face was still as holy as an angel's. Kiki was seriously wiping Big Brother Kong Kong's nose. Kong Kong was dumbfounded. The surrounding crew members and Sister Shirlu all had their mouths open. They were dumbfounded. The audience in front of the TV was even more excited. "What the fuck, the domineering President Kong? Are you being pressed against the wall?" No, it should be said that it was being pressed against the chest. A female audience member cried and questioned. "Aren't you a big brother? You're older than Kiki by 2.5 years. How can you be so weak and easily suppressed by a 4-year-old, my daughter?" No one knew, or perhaps they didn't carefully explore, that Kiki was actually very strong. She could lift such a big box and run with such a heavy basket. If they were to compare strength, Kong Kong, who hadn't grown up yet, might not be stronger than Kiki. However, some audience members interpreted it this way. "What easy suppression, President Kong is just using a strategy. He's enjoying it, okay?" No matter what, after this scene, a group of President Kong and Kiki CP fans appeared in the audience. They discussed with great interest what kind of sparks would fly between the domineering President Kong, who had a heart of gold, and Princess Kiki, who had the most beautiful face, the most kind and gentle personality. Of course, these were things that Fujoshis liked to discuss, just like how they liked to pair Dajuan and Nuoi together. Poplar Fruit hadn't decided yet, so no one could decide Kiki's happiness. Speaking of which, the two children didn't think too much about it. Chi-Chi helped Kong Kong wipe his snot, and after she was done, President Kong continued to sulk with a stiff neck. Okay, your sister has done so much for you. Can you stop being angry? Sister Pomegranate tried to strike while the iron was hot. Let's go in and take a look, okay? Never. Kong Kong still yelled at the top of his lungs. Sister Pomegranate had to stand up and ask the children to go in first to give Kong Kong some time to recover. It was unreasonable for Kong Kong to sulk at this time. However, Kiki didn't go in. She waved her hand and said to Sister Pomegranate, "We're together. Papa said that we can't leave our friends behind." Well, only Kiki and Kong Kong were left sitting outside. Kiki didn't know what to do. Her little brain didn't have the psychological knowledge to analyze other people's thoughts, so she could only stay by Brother Kong Kong's side. Kong Kong was sobbing again. Kiki took out a tissue and handed it to him. "Don't worry about me." Kong Kong only blocked Kiki's hand and said in a low voice, feeling wronged. He didn't make a scene like before. "Brother Kong Kong." Kiki dragged her voice a little coquettishly. She pouted and said, "Why are you still angry? That Sister Pomegranate didn't do it on purpose. I know her. She's very, very nice in other TV shows." Kong Kong was silent. In the end, he took the tissue that Kiki handed to him. However, he didn't wipe his tears or say anything. His mood had improved a little. Oh, then what do you want us to do? How can we go in together?" Kiki saw that Brother Kong Kong didn't respond for a long time. She was a little angry. She pursed her lips and said unhappily, "You even yelled at me. Do you not want to play with me anymore?" She was sad from being yelled at, but Kiki's heart was more worried about losing her friends. Chapter 12-14. The weather was a little hot. Kiki looked good in her clothes, but Minnie's t-shirt was a little thick. Soon her neck was covered in sweat. The little girl kept wiping it with her hands, and her fair neck was a little red. Just like her pitiful eyes at that moment, if Big Brother Kong Kong was still so unapproachable, she would really cry in front of him. Kong Kong looked at her in a daze. Kiki's grievance made him forget his own emotions for a moment. He even forgot to sniff. Kong Kong was the youngest in the family. He had a sister who loved him very much. It was always his parents or sister who took care of his emotions. When was it his turn to comfort others? The little sister in front of him had a little stubbornness in her grievance. It was something he had never seen before. However, he still cared a lot about Kiki. Whether it was during the last trip, when Kiki fought with him to the end in the game of snatching the stool, or the fairy-like girl in the white wedding dress that he could not forget at Grandpa Bai's and Grandma Bai's wedding, or the girl who used her strength to subdue him and wiped his nose for him. I didn't mean that. I'm not angry at you." Kong Kong muttered a few words. However, he was a bossy CEO after all. After all, Kong Kong's mind was not fully mature. He could not say a few words of apology. After these 2 words, he straightened his neck and changed to the side. He snorted and said, "Anyway, it's none of your business. It's up to you to believe it or not." After being annoyed by Kiki, Kong Kong stopped crying. He used the fragrant tissue that Kiki gave him just now to wipe his tears. However, the little boy still wanted to save face and refused to go in. Kiki was actually not really angry. She was just anxious to persuade Big Brother Kong Kong. At this moment, a large group of people suddenly ran out of the door noisily. Xian Xian, Dajuan, and Nuai, who had communicated with Sister Pomegranate, all ran out. They all ran over to persuade Kong Kong. "Kong Kong, Big Brother Kong Kong, why don't you come in?" Xian Xian pulled on Kong Kong's arm and said, Go in, go in." Her voice became soft, just like my daughter. When Kiki saw so many friends coming over, she was even happier. She gently pulled on Kong Kong's hand. Although Kong Kong didn't move, she didn't struggle like before. This meant that the anger in the little boy's heart had almost subsided, and he was only left with one last hurdle. Sister Pomegranate still owed him an apology. Previously, when Sister Pomegranate tried to persuade him, she wasn't very sincere. It was like she was playing a language game. She said something else. Why didn't he go in when the other children went in? Coincidentally, Sister Pomegranate found out this time. After boasting about her beauty to Dajuan and Xian, she really put down her status as an adult and apologized to Kong Kong. Kong Kong, I'm sorry, don't be angry. I've already apologized. Kong Kong remained silent. Xian nodded and said, forgive me. The other children also said that they had forgiven him. Kiki waved her hand and chuckled. I've already forgiven you. Adults do things wrong. I'm apologizing to you now, don't be angry, okay? Sister Pomegranate said. Kong Kong was still pondering, but it seemed that he had already calmed down. His anger had already dissipated. Aya, Sister Pomegranate has already apologized. Brother Kong Kong, forgive her, okay? She didn't do it on purpose. Kiki pulled on Brother Kong Kong's hand and tried to pull him up from the wooden steps. Although Kiki's voice was gentle like water, the little girl's strength was very strong. Moreover, Kong Kong didn't have any intention to struggle, so he was pulled up by Kiki in an instant. Don't be angry. Xian leaned over and gently stroked Brother Kong Kong's stomach, as if to soothe Brother Kong Kong's breath. I'm not angry. Kong Kong glanced at the wrist that was as white as the moon that Chi-Chi was still holding on to, and said stiffly, all right, it's good that you're not angry. Sister Pomegranate laughed. I really like you 5 children. You care about each other so much. Come, let's go in. I'll introduce you to Kong Kong. At this time, Kiki let go of Brother Kong Kong's hand. She turned around and grabbed the luggage that had just run to the side. She persuaded the stubborn Brother Kong Kong, which made the little guy very happy. Her voice was full of joy. She said, Brother Kong Kong, I'll help you carry the luggage. Kiki, I'll help you too. Dejun ran to the back and helped Kiki lift the luggage. Although Kiki could handle it alone, Dejun still showed his manly strength. I'll help Brother Kong Kong too. Xian looked left and right, then ran behind Brother Kong Kong and helped Brother Kong Kong hold the big bag. No need. Kong Kong showed a rare smile. Although it was very short, it was still caught by the photographer. In fact, it wasn't because of Xian, but because of each of his good friends. They made him feel the strength of a team, and he no longer wandered alone on the edge of the team. Kong Kong suddenly pulled Xian to the front and put his arm around Xian's shoulder. The two of them walked in like 2 brothers. Behind them, the village chief put his hands behind his back and followed with a smile. He originally wanted to say a few words of comfort. He didn't expect that the children would solve it by themselves. The audience expressed that they were stunned by Mr. Kong Kong's smile. However, because of this, they liked this big boy even more. In the past, Kong Kong was not very willing to interact with his younger brothers. Perhaps, after this, they would really be able to see the 5 children play together happily. After putting down the luggage, Kiki found Nina, who was being taken care of by the choreographer. Nina's mood was a little better. The choreographer gave her a bottle of yogurt to drink, and she quietly became a little beauty. Nina, do you want to play with your sister? The choreographer pointed at Kiki and asked Nina. Nina nodded. She took the initiative to put her hand in her sister's palm. Nina remembered that her sister was very good to her. Chi-Chi had long since tossed the little conflict she had with Nuai to the back of her mind. Perhaps to Chi-Chi, who was also a child, although she would remember it, this misunderstanding would gradually be resolved as time passed. We're going to see the rooms. Kiki held Nina's little hand. The 2 sisters walked side by side, kicking their legs. They looked at each other's dresses and smiled from time to time. Nina's mood was a lot better. She was almost back to the little beauty who was full of smiles and dancing with joy before Sister Pomegranate knocked on the door. Then where will Nina and Nui live? Nina asked. You don't live with your sister? Kiki pouted and said. Hee, Dad said that he wants to live with my brother. Nina laughed. Chapter 12:15. Let's go. Follow me to check out the rooms. Led by Sister Shirlu, the queen of the earthen building, the children lined up and followed her. Kiki, please take good care of Nina, okay? Nuai reminded Kiki, then excitedly ran to catch up with Xian and Dajuan's team with his grass-green military bag. Kiki held Nina's hand and walked slowly at the back, while Kong Kong followed behind them. Mr. Kong Kong never liked to be in the limelight, so walking at the back was in line with his character. "Nina, this is Brother Kong Kong," Kiki said to Nina while walking, seeing that Kong Kong didn't move even though she made way for him. Nina was actually quite afraid of Kong Kong, mainly because this tall brother wasn't as gentle as her sister. Sometimes he gave off a fierce feeling. Plus his hairstyle, he looked like a caterpillar lying on top of his head, from a child's perspective, which was very scary. However, Kong Kong obviously liked girls younger than him. When he looked at Nina, he actually showed a rare smile that he hadn't shown since the first 2 episodes. Actually, Mr. Kong Kong was quite handsome when he smiled. Although he lost his front teeth in the last few episodes, Xiaohan decided to make Mr. Kong Kong's handsome smile earlier. Even if he didn't make Nina dizzy, Nina was still stunned. She suddenly felt that this big brother wasn't so scary anymore. "Nina, do you want to be good friends with Brother Kong Kong?" Kiki asked. "Brother Kong Kong is very nice, and he will protect you." This really aroused Kong Kong's desire to protect his little brother and sister as a big brother. He nodded and said in a deep voice, "Yes, I will protect you." Nina hugged Chi-Chi's arm shyly and asked her to lower her head. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and she whispered something to Chi-Chi. Nina said she wants to be friends with you. She likes you very much." Kiki giggled and conveyed her sister's shy thoughts. "Brother Kong Kong, can you hold Nina's hand too?" This was a big surprise for Kong Kong. Just now, when his father was outside, he asked him to take care of his sister, but Nina ignored him. He thought Nina hated him. Kong Kong, who had a hidden sister complex, nodded. He went to the inner side, picked up Nina's left hand, and gently held it in his palm. Nina smiled shyly. Kong Kong also looked at her with a gentle smile. This scene was as beautiful as a painting. It was even captured by the cameraman. Whether it was during the broadcast of the show or later on Weibo, it was a hot topic. Of course, the controversy wasn't about whether they should or not. Instead, a group of Kong Kong and Chi-Chi's CP fans, Kong Kong and Nina's CP fans, and even Chi-Chi and Nina's CP fans were foolishly arguing together. The 3 friends were a little slower, but they also rushed to room number 1 for a visit. Room number 1 was on the first floor. It was a very spacious and bright room with a wooden bed, a wooden table and wooden chairs. All the furniture was made of solid wood. Some old records were displayed on the bookshelf. It looked very quaint and artistic. "Wow, it's so beautiful. It looks like a princess's room." Kiki's belated praise came. She liked this room very much because it was clean, bright, and covered with a layer of beautiful flower tiles. The bed was also clean, and the wooden bed was inlaid with large and small pieces of landscape porcelain paintings. In this room, Kiki couldn't help but open her arms and twirl around like she was doing ballet. The way the little girl danced in a miniskirt was also very beautiful. Room number 2 was on the second floor. The second room was also very beautiful. It also had bright windows and clean tables. Of course, this room was a little shabbier, but it was spacious. There were also some pictures on the wall. The children couldn't stop praising this room, saying it was super beautiful and super beautiful. They followed the trend and praised this room to the sky. "It's even more beautiful than my house." Dajuan's evaluation was following the trend too much. Actually, it was obvious to the audience that room number 2 was worse than room number 1. However, the children's taste was really a little unique, haha. In the end, room number 3 was the best. This room had wooden floors and was waxed. It was so bright that it could reflect people's reflections. The walls were freshly painted, and there was a new bed, new wardrobe, new decals, and a few beautiful gourds. "It's so beautiful." The children's exclamations rose and fell. Even Nina held Kiki's hand and said enviously in a low voice, "I also think this is the most beautiful." Room number 4 was the worst of the 4 rooms. It was mainly because there was nothing but a bed and a seemingly dusty table. However, the children who were addicted to praising this room shouted again, "Super beautiful." They believed that Sister Pomegranate was tired of hearing this line. After messing around with the camera hanging on the wall, everyone gathered at the large open space downstairs. They were looking forward to playing the game with the village chief to choose a room. On the table in front of the village chief, there were 5 half-eaten watermelons. The 6 children were curious about what kind of game they would play to choose a room. That's not right. We've only seen 4 rooms. There's still one room that we haven't seen yet. Kiki was the first to think of this problem. She asked curiously. Because that's a very special room. It's very, very, very far from here. Let's take a look first, okay? The village chief's words made the children's excited expressions freeze. Right, I forgot about that. How could this program make all 5 rooms super good and super satisfactory? There would definitely be one room that was the worst. Thinking of the room that Uncle Lu Yi and Nuoi stayed in previously, Kiki was a little nervous and worried. After watching the video, it could be said that fear was written all over the children's faces. Even Kong Kong, who had nonchalantly said, "Then I'll choose one that's far away," had her eyebrows raised and her mouth twisted. Kiki's frowning eyebrows and slightly agape mouth made the audience love and dote on her even more. She was also a child. Although in the previous episode, she kept saying that she wanted to stay in the worst room, at that time, she had her father by her side. With her father by her side, even if she went to the most dangerous place in the world, she would not be afraid. Without her father by her side, the little princess would also become a timid little girl. This room's name is Shangqing Building. It's the oldest house in the entire village. Although he had been led away by the children's thoughts, the village chief still tried to create a scary atmosphere. This room has not been lived in for a long time. When the village chief went there that day, he found some bats flying around. As Kiki and Kong Kang's thoughts were still normal, their faces were tense. They were very afraid. However, there was a child who was abnormally excited. Nuoi, who had jumped out of the Black Bear cave, said something shocking as he interrupted. "When I was on the boat, I saw Batman when I went into the cave to sit in the small car." At this moment, the village chief's heart was probably on the verge of collapse. Chapter 12:16. The village chief, who was confused by the children's unconstrained thoughts and words, finally could not help but stop them. He could not drag this on any longer. If he let each of them tell a story, wouldn't that be terrible? They would not be able to record today's program. Alright babies. Next, let's choose a house. The village chief returned to the main topic. He briefly explained the rules of the house selection game. The children were not allowed to use any tools to eat the watermelon. Within the allotted 2 minutes, whoever ate the fastest would be the first to choose the house they liked. Under the village chief's command, the children quickly pounced on the watermelon in front of them. This was not right. This watermelon was not as well cut as the ones the children used to eat. This was an oval-shaped watermelon that was cut in half. The flesh was hard and there was no way to eat it. How to eat it? There was no choice. They could only use their hands to dig. Use their hands to dig. Even if they could not dig, they could use their mouths to chew. At this time, Kong Kong and Nuoyi's advantage and strength showed. They had already dug a hole in the watermelon and started eating. Dejun looked at his friends, and also started digging. However, the Virgo boy was a clean freak. He was worried about hygiene, so he broke the watermelon piece by piece and ate it. His gentle demeanor made others anxious. Kiki used her mouth and teeth to chew. She did not know how to deal with this hard watermelon. However, she did not manage to chew it. The little girl's mouth was too small, and the angle was not good. She only knew to use her hands to chew it when she saw her brother's actions. Nina, go help your brother. If you help Kiki eat it, your brother still won't be able to choose a house. The village chief laughed and led Nina, who had been following Kiki's sister, to Nuoyi's side. Although Nina was not tall enough, she still helped Sister Kiki take 2 small pieces of watermelon meat. However, after Nina returned to her brother's side, she did not have the chance to eat the watermelon again. Nuoi was immersed in his battle, and Nina could not reach such a big watermelon on the table. She could only become a spectator. The battle was fierce. Everyone ate until they could not speak. However, there was little chubby Xian who did not know how to handle the watermelon. His little paws were fleshy and had some strength, but they were too small. Moreover, after cutting her nails, her chubby little fingers wouldn't be able to handle this big watermelon. As he dug, his fingers slipped. Seeing that his other brothers and sisters were eating, he cried out anxiously, Can you help me dig? I can't. However, big brother Dejun, whom little fatty Xian had asked for help from, was focused on his business of elegantly eating watermelons and had no time to care about him. Xian was on the verge of tears. At this moment, a fair and tender little arm stretched out in front of him. Xian looked up and saw that it was Sister Kiki on the other side. Sister Kiki was eating the watermelon in her right hand. She blinked her big watery eyes and pressed her left hand on his watermelon. Xian hadn't figured it out yet. The left hand was like a claw. It dug down, as if it was the 9-in white bone claw, and a large piece of the watermelon was dug out. So powerful. This was Xian's thought. He watched as Sister Kiki retracted her left hand, that was covered in watermelon juice and flesh. Sister Kiki even licked her left hand. However, this scene was like the smile of God in Xian's eyes. Xian's heart swayed and he laughed foolishly, forgetting his task. Actually, Kiki had only heard her brother's cries and went to help him. She didn't take it to heart at all. After helping, she anxiously ate her own watermelon. But she had to pick a good house. Today her father wasn't here. Kiki didn't have the courage to face that scary old house. However, after a minute, when the village chief said that there was only 1 minute left, all the children became nervous, including Kiki. She didn't care about her image as a princess anymore. Using her left hand and right hand, she ate until her mouth and face were stained with red watermelon meat. She was originally a pretty little girl. She had been put in a difficult position by this evil program team. However, who asked our Princess Chi-Chi to be born beautiful? Even if she was in a bit of a sorry state, and her hair was messy, there was still a bit of wild beauty that leapt out from the camera lens. Those slightly worried eyebrows and eyes that were still as bright as gemstones made people's hearts beat faster. I can't eat anymore. Little Chuchuan's scene that made people burst into laughter started again. The little foodie anxiously stuffed his mouth full of watermelon. Even the juice was dripping down. His clothes were dyed red as he cried out in despair. Who can help me? Looking at his crying and shouting, interrupted by his action of stuffing watermelon meat into his mouth from time to time, the audience almost fell down laughing at him. Would Big Sis Chi-Chi still be the angel of salvation that he dreamed of seeing? No, this time Sister Kiki had to give it her all. Didn't you see that Kiki was so anxious that she couldn't even take care of herself? Even her beautiful little face was about to bury itself in the watermelon to eat? I'll help you. A savior really appeared. However, this savior was a little old. So much so that when Sister Pomegranate shouted those words and rushed out from behind, Xian subconsciously hugged the watermelon and ran. He was really a foodie. He actually didn't forget to run with the watermelon. After regaining her senses, Sister Pomegranate really helped Xian eat the watermelon. The two of them worked together and ate a lot. However, after the time was up, Xian might have been affected by his previous irritation. He pursed his lips and complained, "My clothes are all wet." Just now he was desperately eating. How could he care about his clothes? Especially Kiki and Xian. The two youngest children didn't care about their clothes. Kiki was fine. Her top was originally red, but Minnie was also dyed a little. However, she wasn't too worried as she wasn't a clean freak. However, Xian was different. He became more and more anxious, crying and shouting, You are all so annoying. Ooh. However, Xian's childish voice didn't have any lethality. It even made people feel that it was very funny. It's okay. Later, we can use the washing machine to wash it. Kiki came over to comfort her brother. Xian's crying stopped abruptly, not knowing whether it was because he got the answer he wanted, or because he was comforted by his favorite sister. The village chief secretly smiled bitterly. He wanted to say that there was no washing machine, but he was worried that the children wouldn't accept it, so he simply tried to muddle through. Well, let's see the results of the watermelon eating competition. The village chief changed the topic. The announcement of the results made all the children pricked up their ears. Chapter 12-17. The winner was Kiki. Even though she was a girl, she put in a lot of effort into the competition. Using both hands, she ate a big hole in the watermelon. Kiki was the first to choose. She thought about it and chose the first room she had chosen. It was the room with records on the wall and beautiful tiles on the floor. It was the room that looked like a princess room. The second place was Kong Kong. Kong Kong was a big brother after all. He ate very quickly and was very clean. His white shirt was not stained with watermelon juice like Kiki and Xian Xian. He chose the best room, number 3. It was the room that was decorated like a new house. The third place was actually Xian Xian. He chose room number 2, which was not bad. Even though Nuai was fighting alone and left his sister pitifully to the side, he was still faster than the elegant Dejun. Hence he chose room number 4. No one was willing to choose the remote and scary room number 5. Hence, it could only fall to the last place. Dejun, who had not realized anything, was confused until the village chief announced his last place and asked him if he dared to live in room number 5. Dejun was shocked. It was as if he had been struck by lightning. Dejun opened his mouth and said, "I don't dare. Because there are cannons or something there, right?" Nuai did not know how to empathize with his friend's feelings. He desperately described the horror of the strange sound in the video. Dajuan wants to live alone in that old house that's been there for more than 400 years. The village chief hurriedly stopped Nuai from continuing. However, he did not know that his words were the sharp blade that cut Dejun's wound. I can't live alone." Dejun was already a little uncomfortable. Now he cried bitterly. "I'm scared." Kiki stood behind Dejun. She frowned worriedly and grabbed her clothes. She looked worriedly at brother Dejun. She did not know what to do. She could only look pleadingly at the village chief. She wanted to see if the almighty village chief could give her a solution. "You guys discuss it and tell me what to do later, okay?" However, the village chief was not as supportive as Kiki had expected. Instead, he kicked the ball back to the children. I want someone to stay with me." Dejun was sobbing so hard that he couldn't speak. His voice was choked with sobs. "Who's going to accompany me in which house?" A gloomy cloud hung over the children's heads, making it hard for them to breathe. Fortunately, at this moment, Nina, who had been ignored by her brothers and sisters who were so nervous about the competition, had been taken to the side by the director. Otherwise, she would have been scared out of her wits when she saw this scene. Who would be the brave one? Big brother Kong Kong? Or the angelic Kiki? But brother Kong Kong was scared too. Needless to say, Kiki had tried so hard to eat the watermelon just now because she wanted to escape from that horrible house. Without her father by her side, Kiki had always wanted to open her mouth to help brother Dajuan who was crying like a meatball, but she didn't dare to open her mouth. "Oh, then I'll stay with you. I'll stay with you in that house, okay?" No one expected that the one who stood up for them at this moment would be Xian Xian. It was actually little chubby Xian who had been crying and eating at the same time because he didn't want to be last. Although his voice was childish, it was full of strength. Kiki was also shocked. She didn't expect brother Xian Xian to be so brave. Her mouth was agape as she looked at brother Xian Xian who was almost a head shorter than her. Her eyes full of admiration and respect. I'm scared of that house." Even so, Dejun was still scared. He cried as he wiped his tears with a tissue. "I'll go with you, okay?" Xian Xian added, thinking that brother Dajuan didn't hear him. But Dejun was still weeping endlessly and didn't continue the conversation. How did the discussion go? In the distance, the village chief, who felt that the scene had quietened down, walked back and asked, "It's done. But he doesn't want to stay in that house. He's scared of that." Nuai understood correctly, but he started to ramble again. "I just said that I'll stay with him." Xian Xian blinked innocently and said, But I don't want to go." Dejun still shook his head and cried as he said, "Then how about this?" Kiki, who had been invisible all this while, suddenly opened her mouth. Although she was still scared, she couldn't bear to see brother Dajuan so sad. I'll switch with brother Dajuan. But I don't dare to stay there alone. I'll stay with you. Zhou Shimin. Did you see that? Did you see that? That's what your son said. Perhaps if Zhou Shimin saw it now he would definitely cry. Xian Xian, you're finally enlightened. But Xian Xian was really great. He didn't hesitate and immediately agreed. Yes. Kiki beamed. She took a big step forward and happily held Xuan's hand, saying, Village head, I won't be scared if I sleep with Xianxian. Was she really not scared? Actually, she wasn't. It was just that the kindness in her heart made her take this step bravely. Brother Xianxian was so brave, how could she as his sister fall behind? With a good friend to face it with hand in hand, Kiki felt that perhaps she wouldn't be scared anymore. Was that really the case? Kiki of course didn't dare to think too much. She was just like Xianxian, who was full of righteousness. Xianxian smiled foolishly as he held his sister's hand. He was so happy that he was about to explode. What happened next almost made little fatty Xian so happy that he wanted to fly. But the village head smiled bitterly and muttered in his heart, "That won't do. Especially Chi-Chi before your father took her away. He even asked me if the two of you slept together. If you slept together. If he comes back tonight and sees." Cough cough. The village head waved his hand and said, "Our rules of the game are that we can't exchange rooms." Dejun, who was a little better just now, immediately became anxious again. His eyes turned red and he was about to cry again. But, the village head hurriedly held Dejun down and said, "But you two can temporarily stay here together. Xianxian, didn't you just say that you're willing to let Dejun rest with you?" Xianxian nodded. "Then Dejun, you can temporarily stay with Xianxian in room 2, okay?" The village head asked. How could he say no? To be able to escape from that terrifying room 5 was already a great fortune. Dejun hurriedly nodded, then turned his head and said to Xianxian in a choked voice, "Thank you, brother Xianxian. No need to thank me. You can stay with me and we can play together." Xianxian smiled foolishly. Kiki also let out a big sigh of relief. Although she was smiling while holding Xuan's hand, in reality, when she made this decision, she also went through a very difficult struggle in her heart. Without her father by her side, Kiki really didn't dare to face that terrifying old house. Chapter 12:18. The village chief asked Sister Shirlu to be the temporary host. Sister Shirlu was more enthusiastic, and her motivation to mobilize the children was slightly stronger than the village chief's. After she appointed Kong Kong as the team leader, Kong Kong was super enthusiastic. The production crew had very naughtily prepared a large bathtub for each child that they couldn't even wrap their arms around. The bathtub was stuffed with water bottles, blankets, pillows, small wash basins, and other daily necessities. It was so heavy that even a Hercules, like Chi-Chi, could barely lift it up. Seeing everyone's cries, Kong Kong took the lead and set an example for his friends to help others. However, the first person he chose to help was Kiki, who had just pressed him against the wall. Chi-Chi's main problem was that she couldn't hold the basin steadily, and her center of gravity was unstable. But in reality, she could still manage it with some effort. However, girls weren't as brave as boys. Subconsciously, she still hoped that someone would come to help her. "Thank you, big brother Kong Kong." Feeling the weight on her hand lighten, Chi-Chi lifted her head and saw that it was big brother Kong Kong. She smiled cheerfully. Kong Kong's face was slightly red, and he didn't dare to make eye contact with Kiki. The little boy was a little shy, but he didn't say a word. However, it didn't matter. It didn't affect Kiki's happy mood. She carried the bathtub while talking to brother Kong Kong. Brother Kong Kong walked slowly. "There's a ditch over there. Hey, I'm going over there. Is my room beautiful? I think it's super beautiful." Fortunately, the little girl didn't talk much, and she didn't give people the feeling that she was Tang Sanzang. Kiki's room was very close. It was on the first floor, and they quickly moved the things in. After putting them down, Kiki said sweetly, "Brother Kong Kong, thank you." This was the second time she thanked him. Kong Kong raised his head and said in a rough voice, "Hurry up and tidy up your room." With that, he walked out. However, the photographer still managed to capture him with his back facing Chi-Chi. The corners of his lips curled up uncontrollably. Kong Kong ran out and continued to help Xianxian and the others carry things. Xuan's room was on the second floor, and it was a lot of effort to climb the stairs, so the four of them worked together. "I think brother Kong Kong is also super good." Kiki hugged a pillow and put it on the bed. When she saw Camera's good friend by the bed, she happily greeted Camera, and then whispered something to it. However, after saying that, the little girl scratched her head while wiping her sweat. No one knew what she was thinking. Because the weather was too hot, she kept wiping the sweat off her neck. Her neck was pink. Could it be that he was considering this? Poplar Fruit had told her to choose a house, put down her things, and change her clothes. But it wasn't time for that yet. Kiki's eyes lit up. She carefully placed the pleasant goat bag on the chair and ran out. She also wanted to help her other friends. However, when they went out at this time, there was not a single person in the open space. There were only 3 large bathtubs left. Nina, where are my brothers? Kiki ran to look for the little beauty who was sitting quietly beside the director's sister. Nui went up. Seeing that Sister Kiki was happy, Nina didn't stay by herself. She reached out to Sister Kiki and asked her to pull her up. Then Nina, let's help our brothers, okay? Kiki held Nina's hand and went back to the large bathtubs. Okay. Nina followed her sister's lead. She had no objections. However, my daughter didn't know how they could handle such a large bathtub with Nina's negligible strength. We're coming. However, before they could take action, Nui, Dejun, and Kong Kong came running down from upstairs. The girls don't need help. The boys can do it. Dejun said loudly. Yes. Nui also shouted. Kiki and Nina gave up their positions. Nina even waved her arms happily, as if she was very excited to see this scene. Perhaps it was because there were girls watching, but the boys were working especially hard. However, when they reached the 2nd floor, it was a little difficult. Nuoyi's room was on the 4th floor. They had to push the bathtub up 1 step at a time, bending over. It was super tiring. Let's take out the things. Each of us can take a little. Isn't that enough? Kiki suddenly suggested an idea that made everyone's eyes light up. Thus, the boys all started to move. They broke up the things in the bathtub, and each of them took a little. It was very easy, including Nina. She also got a ball of tissue. The little beauty was very happy. Holding the tissue, she couldn't stop smiling at the director behind the camera. When they reached Nuoyi's room, because Nina was there, everyone helped them tidy up the room. Then they helped Dejun and Brother Kong Kong together. In the end, when they were helping Brother Kong Kong, Xian, who had changed his clothes, ran out. While the boys were busy helping each other and showing the camaraderie of a team, what were the fathers doing when they were taken away by the bus? Poplar Fruit and the others were taken to the kindergarten in town by the bus. It was not far from the earthen building where the children were. It was probably only a few kilometers away. However, it was different from what Poplar Fruit and the others thought. Poplar Fruit and the others were not taking care of the children. They were going to be the children. These adults were going to be around the same age as their own children. They also had to go to class, dance, and eat with the children. It was really torturous for them. Poplar Fruit and the others did not say anything. They returned to Kiki's room. After helping all the boys tidy up, Kiki went back to her room to tidy up. The bed was quickly tidied up. Her toiletries were also arranged neatly like the boys in front of her. Then, she had to take care of her personal hygiene. Although Kiki was not a clean freak, she also liked to be clean and beautiful. In the past, there was always Papa. Kiki pursed her lips. But now that her father had gone to do a task, Kiki needed to be strong first. She took a big bathtub and ran outside to fill it half with water. Although it was a little different, Kiki still thought of what to do from her father. Close the door. Kiki closed the door and was about to take off her clothes. However, she remembered her father's instructions. Be sure to cover the camera when you change clothes. Girls can't be seen naked. Shame. However, Kiki could not reach it. She took her own small coat, which was very light. She came to the camera's good friend, waved and said, "Can you come down for a while?" The camera lowered its head obediently. The audience only saw the darkness in front of them. Then they heard the little girl giggle and say, "I'll have to trouble you first. Wait for me." This was the agreement between the little princess and the camera's good friend. "Okay, I'll wait for you." Chapter 12:19. The camera waited for a long time. Of course, the wait in the middle was cut out by the production team. The little girl finally lifted the veil in front of the camera. The little girl had already changed out of the slightly dirty mini dress. Then, she changed into a dry and comfortable new Mickey's white short-sleeve t-shirt. She didn't wear a dress anymore. Instead, she wore denim shorts from the previous season. She still wore her pantyhose. Her father said that there were more mosquitoes here. She washed her face by herself just now, so the little girl looked exceptionally fresh and beautiful. Although her hairstyle was still the same as when she first arrived, with her father's little ponytail, under the moisturizing water, the few strands of curly hair looked quite playful and cute. Did I become very beautiful? The little girl touched her face with her right hand. She was a little shy and also a little nervous. Because there was no mirror to see how she looked after washing her face, she could only happily play the game of nodding with the camera's best friend. Of course, when she was tidying up, the cameraman outside came over to record from the side. He captured the little girl actually using the camera's best friend's shelf hanging on the wall as a drying rack. When Kiki finished her work and came out, Kong Kong was chatting with Sister Pomegranate downstairs. Kong Kong was actually smiling as if he was no longer the cold and aloof President Kong, but an ordinary child who was being coaxed very happily. The audience all said, "President Kong, you've changed." Of course, President Kang's female fans loved him even more. They said, "What do you know? This is Kong Kong's true nature. Being cold and aloof is just a disguise. His heart is still full of love." Kiki ignored them. She was thinking about her new friend, Sister Nina. Kiki excitedly climbed up to the 4th floor. Then, she heard the director's sister's advice. "Xian, this isn't good." Kiki still didn't understand. When she looked up, she saw Xian cupping Nina's little face, who was hiding beside the director's sister, and gently kissing it. Kiki blinked. She didn't say anything and walked up the stairs. When the director saw Kiki, she smiled and reminded Xian, Sister Kiki saw you." Xian was pulled around in a daze. When he raised his head, he discovered that Chi-Chi's sister's pretty face was right in front of him. Her big eyes that were as clear as water, however, were like mirrors that reflected his action of stealing a kiss from his sister. My sister always cries." Xian tried to explain that he just wanted to comfort his sister, but in fact, he did have the idea of having an affair, but he was found out. In fact, Kiki hadn't said anything yet. She just turned to look at Nina, who was behind him. When Nina saw her sister, she pouted and threw herself into Sister Kiki's arms. "Sigh, forget it. I've been misunderstood and exposed." Xian dejectedly turned away from Sister Kiki and went downstairs. The photographer followed him and saw that Xian was very melancholy. Every step he took was very heavy, as if he had just experienced something unforgettable. But in fact, Kiki just hugged Nina and asked her, "Nina, what's wrong?" She didn't notice the change in Xian's mood, because in Kiki's opinion, it was very normal. There was nothing to make a fuss about. And at this moment, Nina was in her arms. Kiki felt the happiness of being relied on as a big sister. How could she care about brother Xian? "I don't want to play with them." Nina pouted. Nina had been resisting Xian's kiss just now. "Why? Brother Xian cares about you." Kiki giggled. "Don't be afraid. We're all good people." However, Kiki's persuasion didn't work very well. At this time, Nui, who had just chased away Dejun, who was annoying to make friends with, he went straight to his sister, wanting to take Nina away from Kiki's arms. He thought that Kiki was pestering his sister like Xian and Dejun just now. Kiki could only let go, but she was very unhappy. She pouted and asked, "Nu, what are you doing? Why don't you let me play with Nina?" She didn't even ask her brother, which showed how unhappy the little girl was. She was like this when she came in just now. Because Nina doesn't want to play with you." Noi said. "Nina wants to play with me." Kiki felt wronged. She felt that her kindness was misunderstood. She was very upset and her eyes were a little red. Nina blinked. She went over to Kiki and held her sister's hand. She stood between Nui and Kiki. Nui wasn't unreasonable. He looked at it carefully, then nodded and said, "All right. She likes to play with you. Nina and I are good friends." Kiki's mood turned for the better. She held Nina's hand and smiled happily. Nina also recovered from her nervousness. Although she wasn't used to talking to the camera, she still smiled happily. Then I'm also good friends with you. Nina and I are both good friends with you, right? Nuoi finally had the time to plan his own friendship. Today, because of his sister, Nuoi had become a selfless guard protecting his sister. That's right. Chi-Chi giggled. Her previous unhappiness had long since vanished into thin air. Let's go down and eat. It's ready. The director heard the sound of the headset and called out to the children. I'm hungry. Nina finally opened her mouth. I'm hungry too, Nui said. I'm hungry too. Let's go eat together, Kiki said. She held Nina's hand and walked down the stairs in front. Nui followed behind to protect them. Where are Brother Dajuan and Brother Kong Kong? Kiki asked curiously when they reached the kitchen and saw Brother Xianxian walking downstairs. Xianxian, the little foodie, was full of energy because of the food. He shook his head and said, I don't know. Kiki looked at the auntie who was cooking. She acted as if she was at home and moved the chairs quickly. The seats were a little narrow, just enough for 4 people to sit around. The director said, You guys eat first. Kong Kong and Dajuan can eat with Sister Shirlu on the other side. Nuai was busy blowing the fan, so there was no one to take care of Nina. Little chubby Xian couldn't help but like his sister. He got down from the chair that Kiki had moved for him and walked towards his sister. Sister, I won't hit you, okay? Xianxian said in a baby voice. Actually, at that moment, Nina was a little confused. She looked at her brother and was probably asking for help. However, Xianxian had already hugged her. Of course, Xianxian didn't go overboard. In fact, he hugged her for a while and let go with satisfaction. He even held his sister's face and looked at her lovingly. Chapter 12:20. Chi-Chi was still busy helping the uncles and aunties to serve the cooked dishes and rice when a commotion broke out over here. She heard Nina yelling, No, no. She was on her guard and a little irritated. It turned out that Xianxian had always wanted to sit next to Sister Nina. He promised to compromise and give up his seat, but Nina was unwilling to do so. She glared angrily at Brother Xianxian, who had hugged her just now. Kiki only noticed the conflict now. Nuai already knew that his sister didn't like Xianxian and was about to return to his original seat. But Xianxian was anxious again. Little chubby Xian felt wronged, which aroused his stubbornness. He wanted to force himself on Nina and take the seat next to her. But if he did that, he would be strongly opposed by Nuai, who was determined to protect his sister. Just as Xianxian was about to walk forward, a small hand suddenly grabbed his arm. With little fatty Xianxian's strength, even Nuai, who was older than him, might not be able to resist him. However, it was such a slender and soft hand that held Xianxian so tightly that he couldn't move even if he struggled. The camera panned over. It was Kiki. She held Xianxian, who was actually a little out of control. Not only did she make Xianxian unable to move, but she also held a bowl of hot rice with her left hand. Really, Kiki's strength couldn't be measured by ordinary people's standards. The audience was a little surprised for a while, but then their attention was diverted by Kiki's next move. Xianxian, come and sit next to me, okay? Kiki's soft voice sounded in Xuanxuan's ear. Xianxian didn't struggle, but lowered his head and pouted. Did he realize his mistake? Not necessarily, but in front of Kiki, who he liked, little brother Xianxian was very obedient. He had no choice but to accept it. He had been subdued. But when Kiki held Xuanxuan's hand, little chubby Xian raised his head again, his eyes filled with surprise. Kiki actually liked this curly-haired little brother, not only because he once gave her a beautiful princess dress, but also because of his enthusiasm and loyalty to his friends. Of course, this liking was limited to taking care of little brother. Poplar fruit, humph. You can sit here. In order to prevent Xianxian from fighting with Nina, Kiki let him sit on her left. This way, he and Nina would be separated by Kiki and Nuai. Aya, let's eat. Even I want to go out and play with big brother Dejun. Nuai also forgot about the unhappiness just now. He waved the chopsticks in his hand and said happily, I want to play too. Xian echoed loudly. Let's eat first. I'm so. Xianxian, hurry. I'll get some food for you. Kiki's stomach was rumbling with hunger. She had a big appetite and was very punctual. She was just fooling around and didn't notice, but now she was starving. But she still took care of her little brother enthusiastically. After getting some food for Xianxian, Kiki took a bite of rice. Xianxian grunted like a pig. I don't know how to use chopsticks. Chi-Chi looked at the delicious food in front of her and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. However, the little girl who was happy to be an elder sister still put down her chopsticks and turned to Xianxian. Then, how about I feed you? And so, Xianxian happily enjoyed being fed by his sister. He even asked happily, I want a big lump of rice. Little chubby Xian ate happily while Nina sat by herself. Nuoi, who had trouble taking care of himself, also wanted to feed his sister when he saw Kiki's expression. I want you to feed me too. Nina looked at brother Xianxian enviously. Seeing him so happy, she ate a small piece of rice stuck on Nuoyi's chopsticks. She dropped the rest and said with a little jealousy. Nuoi scratched his head. Kiki looked at her little sister. She was so busy. Xianxian was very good at this time. He took his chopsticks and said generously, Then I'll feed Sister Nina. I can eat alone. And so Nui switched places with Kiki. Poor Kiki, who had to take care of her little brother and sister before she could eat by herself. She had been swallowing her saliva while taking care of her little sister. She was very hungry and wanted to eat. Xianxian, you dropped the rice on the floor. On the other side, Xianxian and Nuai were eating happily. The two children had forgotten that they almost had a fight and were eating noisily. Nina looked at Kiki, who was very gentle and good at taking care of people. Then she looked at the chubby brother with rice on his face. She wondered why people were so different from each other. Xianxian still didn't know how to use chopsticks. Luckily, Sister Pomegranate came to check on the situation. She asked for spoons for the children and said, Eat by yourself. Let me feed Nina. Only then was Chi-Chi relieved. She could finally eat. Xianxian ate very quickly, and so did Nuai. They were the first to eat. After they were full, they wanted to go out and play. But Nuai wanted to wait for Nina, so they stayed in the kitchen for the time being. Nui, why doesn't Nina like me? Xianxian looked at Nina. He wanted to go up and play with her, but Nina was sitting in Sister Pomegranate's arms and eating. She doesn't like to play with you. Nuai changed the question into a statement and repeated it. Then why doesn't she like to play with me? Xianxian was anxious. He felt wronged. He liked his sister very much, and in his opinion he didn't bully his sister. However, Nui couldn't give a reason, but he still said seriously, Nina doesn't like to play with you. The older brother didn't want Xianxian to get close to his sister. He stood in front of his sister and blocked her. Xianxian. Kiki was still eating. She put down her chopsticks and pulled the aggrieved chubby Xian to her side. She shook her head and said, Nina is afraid that you will kiss her. You were hugging Nina just now. She didn't allow it. Kiki had seen chubby Xian's crime and remembered Nina's reaction at that time. After hearing Sister Kiki's words, Nina nodded. She felt that Sister Kiki had spoken her mind. But I like Nina. I want to be friends with her. Xianxian pouted. He had given Sister Kiki to Nina just now. Sister Pomegranate, who only knew the whole story now, wanted to say something. But when she saw Kiki explaining, she didn't say anything. She also wanted to see if the children could resolve the conflict between themselves. Chapter 12:21. He's a bad guy. Nina suddenly said. Now that she had someone to back her up, she dared to speak. However, these words hurt the innocent little fatty Xian's heart a little. He pouted and lowered his head, muttering, I'm not a bad guy. But this voice was probably only heard by Chi-Chi. Xianxian is not a bad guy. Nina. Kiki quickly turned her head and waved her hand. She said to Nina, Xianxian just wants to play with you. Then he takes good care of you. Kiki was a little sad. She didn't want to see her favorite brother and sister quarrel, but she thought it was difficult for her to communicate with them. After all, she was also a child. She couldn't be as considerate as adults. Nina listened to Sister Pomegranate. Xian is not a bad guy. He just doesn't know how to express his love for you. So he is a little anxious and doesn't take your feelings into consideration, right? Sister Pomegranate reminded her. Nina nodded. Kiki also nodded. She turned her head and looked at Xian, who lowered his head. She gently shook his hand and said, Xian, Sister Pomegranate is right. You like Nina, but you can't bully her, right? Papa said that girls can't be hugged and kissed by boys. Kiki said. Poplar Fruit found an opportunity to tell Kiki this after they got home. This way Kiki could accept it easily. Xian raised his head and looked at Kiki in surprise. He didn't know this before. If you want to kiss Nina, you have to get Nina's papa's permission. Kiki waved her hand and said. If Nina's papa doesn't agree and you kiss Nina, Nina will be unhappy. Sister Pomegranate looked at Kiki in surprise. She didn't know that this little girl would talk about this. It seemed that Poplar Fruit's family had educated her well. However, Kiki's ability to persuade children was not completely learned from Poplar Fruit. She was also influenced by what she saw in kindergarten. Oh, then I won't do it in the future. Xian's mood instantly changed and he became more cheerful. He waved his white, chubby little hand and said, You have to apologize to Nina. Kiki jumped off the chair and pulled him to Nina's side. Seeing that it was Kiki who was leading him, Nua stepped aside. Nina, I won't kiss you in the future. Can we still be good friends? Xian asked as she scratched her belly. In fact, Nina was already over the moon after hearing so much. She pretended to be aloof, raised her head, and nodded. However, this nod seemed more like arrogance. You've forgiven him, right? Sister Pomegranate asked. You're not angry with Xian anymore, right? Xian is actually very good. He will give you a gift. Kiki walked closer, took Nina's hand, and put it together with Xian's hand. She said, Shake hands. You'll be good friends in the future. Nina hesitated for a moment, and then shook Xian's hand. At this moment, Xian was overjoyed. He was so happy that he jumped on the spot, as if he had discovered a new delicacy. He smiled foolishly. However, with no partner, Nui was easily influenced by his friends. He also held Xian's hand and smiled. Xian, you're also my sister's good friend. Yes, I'm also Nina's good friend. Xian said in a childish voice. Nina finished eating quickly. Nui held his sister's hand, and went out with Xian. Kiki was the last to eat. She wanted to catch up with her friends, but she was not full yet. During this time, she fed and persuaded Xian. Kiki spent a lot of effort. Kiki hurriedly finished the rice in her bowl. She did not eat much before she hurried to follow them out. However, Kiki forgot that this place was different from home. There was a threshold. She was in a hurry and did not pay attention. She tripped and fell. Everyone turned around and saw that Chi had fallen in front of the door. She had fallen very hard, and they could feel it just by listening to the sound. She had fallen to the ground with her left arm. Although she had practiced martial arts with her father and had a good physique, the fall still made the little girl groan in pain. Ouch! Kiki got up from the ground. Her arm hurt from the fall, and she did not dare to move. It was painful. It was really painful. The little girl frowned and tried hard to hold back her tears. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she did not cry in the end. If Poplar Fruit was here, Kiki would definitely cry in her father's arms. But when her father was not here, she did not cry. But looking at her pitiful appearance, whether it was the audience in front of the TV or Poplar Fruit, who later saw it on TV, they could not help but feel sorry for the little girl. Later, after the show was broadcast, Poplar Fruit reposted the official Weibo of Where Are You Going, Daddy? He expressed his amazement at his daughter's performance in this segment. I really did not expect Kiki to be so strong when I am not around. But I want to be by your side all the time. I don't want you to be hurt at all. The reason Yonggwa said this was because at that time, there was indeed another major event that happened. However, I'll talk about this later on. First, it was the staff next to her. Then, her friends and Sister Pomegranate, who were playing in the open space in the middle of the earthen building, all gathered around. Seeing her friends coming over, Kiki wiped away the tears in her eyes. She did not want her brother and sister to see her in such a sorry state. Sister, are you hurt? Xian asked worriedly. I think it's very painful. Nui said with a sad face. Let's be strong. It's okay. Let me take a look. Sister Pomegranate pulled Kiki up from the ground and let her raise her arm to take a look. It's okay. It's okay. It's not bleeding. It was just a little red. Maybe it would become bruised when she went back. In fact, this was not a problem. When Poplar Fruit came back, he would give her a massage and there would be no bruises. Moreover, Kiki's knees were not hurt. It could be seen that the little girl's physical fitness was really good. Now that the most painful and panic-stricken moment had passed, Chi-Chi's beautiful little face wasn't as taut as it was just now. This really made a lot of the audience look at her in a new light. What was even more impressive was Dejun, who arrived later. He found a medicine bag for Kiki from the bag he had been carrying. There was also an ointment for bruises. Dejun was very considerate and put it on Kiki. Thank you, brother Dejun. Feeling the concern of her friends, Kiki finally showed a sweet smile. It doesn't hurt so much now. Chapter 12:22. It was time to sleep in the afternoon. Unlike the other children, Kiki said goodbye to her friends and went back to her room alone after Sister Pomegranate requested to go back to her room to sleep. Perhaps because she hurt her arm, Kiki sat on the bed and was not in a good mood. When she was in pain, although Sister Pomegranate and the other children were there to comfort her, Kiki still thought of her father. If her father was by her side, he would definitely rush over to hug her and let her lie in his warm chest. Then she would listen to his soft, comforting words. That would be the most beautiful music in the world. Although her father could never sing a song well, if her father was by her side, her arm would not hurt. Her father's thumb was just like Princess Elsa. It could do amazing magic. His gentle kneading was more effective than any medicine in the world. But now Kiki felt so much pain that she wanted to cry. If her father was by her side, Kiki believed that her father would not even let her fall. Her father was the most amazing father in the world. He would accurately sense her danger, and then hug her at the last second before she fell to the ground. She missed her father. When he was alone, and after he was injured, he missed her even more. Kiki rubbed her eyes and pursed her lips. However, she did not cry because her father said that Kiki had to be strong when her father was not around. But Kiki wanted to know when her father would come back. She looked outside and saw that the door was closed. Although her uncle was outside, he might be resting. Kiki could only place her hopes on the camera that had always brought her so much joy. Will I see Papa tomorrow? The little girl hugged her injured left arm and looked at her camera friend pitifully and asked. Her lonely, longing and sad expression made everyone in the audience want to run over and hug the little girl to comfort her. I want Papa. Papa. Kiki in the camera choked a little towards the end. Her camera friend, who had never disappointed Chi-Chi before, was still here this time. Although it took a long time to react as usual, it suddenly moved and nodded its head up and down. Really? Kiki's rain immediately turned sunny. Her slightly red eyes suddenly brightened up. She saw hope. She saw hope that her father would come back. That was enough. I miss Papa so much. The little girl obediently hugged her blanket and took an afternoon nap, looking forward to the mission in the afternoon. Then tomorrow her father would be back. At this time, what were Poplar Fruit and the others doing? Still in kindergarten? No. After being tormented in the kindergarten, Hujun Lin Yongjian Zhou Shimin and Poplar Fruit actually walked back home on foot. Of course, they didn't walk far before they met the village chief who was standing coolly beside a tractor beside a small hill. They didn't expect that the village chief wasn't here to pick them up, but to give them tools to chop bamboo from the bamboo forest on the hillside to make toys for the children. The saber was placed on the ground. He had no choice. No matter how hard the task was, no matter how many mosquitoes there were in the bamboo forest, he still had to continue working, right? In order to see the children as soon as possible. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit brought some mosquito repellent from the Miao tribe that he had prepared before going to Guishan province. After applying it on everyone, the mosquitoes didn't dare to get close. When they went up the mountain, Zhou Shimin smiled and teased. Poplar Fruit, saber is your strength, right? How many terrorists did you kill last year with one saber? 2 sabers. After knowing each other for so many days, they were very good friends. Poplar Fruit didn't act modest with Zhou Shimin. After he corrected him, he laughed. 2 sabers? Zhou Shimin handed over the saber in his hand and smiled. This should be enough for 2, right? Show off a little bit of your skills? Poplar Fruit took the 2 sickles in his hand and gently twirled them in a dazzling pattern. This was enough to make the audience scream. He smiled slightly, looked at the village chief, guests and photographers around him, and asked, "Are you really going to come? Come on. In this place, let's add some crouching tiger and hidden dragon music." Hu Jun laughed and asked everyone to make space for Poplar Fruit. The photographers also spread out to ensure that there were different angles to capture him. Well, although it was a sickle, it seemed that everyone was very interested. Poplar Fruit really intended to perform a little in front of the camera. Although he certainly wouldn't show the real skills of the two-handed Miao Dao, it was still possible to integrate it into Tai Chi Kung Fu and make a little performance. Let's start. 1, 2, 3, action. Lin Yongjian acted as a temporary director. As soon as he finished speaking, Yangguo's body soared into the air. His footsteps turned into a shadow. With a kick, his legs crisscrossed between the extremely elastic bamboos. His body actually rose by more than 2 meters. Poplar Fruit went easy on him. If he really used his kung fu, it wouldn't be a problem for him to fly 5 to 10 meters. It depended on the toughness of the bamboo. Just as he flew to the highest point, his arms and body twisted like a spiral. The knife light was like a shadow. People could only hear the sound of the knife striking the bamboo, but they couldn't see the bamboo. This was the difference between realms. Even the agile Zhou Shimin was dazzled by it. Poplar Fruit landed steadily, and even made a classic Huang Feihong pose with both hands holding the knives. Everyone applauded, but they didn't know what was good about it. Because it was only cool, it didn't have the ending of the hero in the movies. So after people applauded, they always felt that something was missing. Zhou Shimin felt it, but he didn't say it out loud. He just smiled at Poplar Fruit and said, "Poplar Fruit is indeed a man with real kung fu." Aya. The knives are chipped. Poplar Fruit held the 2 knives. He didn't have time to be modest. When he picked them up and looked at them, he shouted, "Both knives are broken. Brother Zhou, we can't chop the bamboo today." Village chief, the quality of your knives is too bad, right? Poplar Fruit's words immediately destroyed the heroic demeanor just now. Everyone burst into laughter. The knives were broken, but they could still chop bamboo. They just had to use the other side. Although Zhou Shimin was from Guishan province, he didn't have as much experience in chopping bamboo as Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit had seen how people chop bamboo. If you can't chop it directly, how much effort will it take? Poplar Fruit called a few fathers to work together and bent a bamboo. Then Poplar Fruit stood at the root and chopped. You have to cut at the bent point. Chop, chop, chop. Look, it's already half broken. Sure enough, after using this method, the efficiency increased by leaps and bounds. Soon, the fathers carried the bamboo down the mountain. Chopping bamboo on the mountain was actually very enjoyable. Although Poplar Fruit and Zhou Shimin were the youngest, being born in the 80s, they couldn't beat Hu Jun and Lin Yongjian, who were born in the 60s and 70s. It was too funny. The childlike innocence they had in kindergarten was still there. But no matter what, they were now sitting on the village chief's tractor, carrying the fruits of their labor back to the gathering place to make toys for the children. Chapter 12:23. The little girl, who had the habit of taking afternoon naps, slept very soundly. She wondered if it was because she saw her father in her dream. Anyway, when she was woken up by the alarm clock, she still had a sweet smile on her face. She lay on the bed for a while, shaking her head in a daze. Only then did she get over her sleepiness and grumpiness. The laughter of Brother Nui and Brother Kong Kong came from outside the window. Only then did Kiki remember that she had a mission to do in the afternoon. A bright smile appeared on the little girl's face. Kiki was also super happy to play with her friends. She quickly got out of bed, put on her tights and small shoes, and then shamelessly wiped her face with the towel hanging on the camera rack. Only then did she run out impatiently. Kiki's left arm was already able to move freely. She had forgotten about the injury, so it probably wasn't that serious. In the middle of the earthen building, there were several large bamboo baskets. There were eggs and chirping little chicks in the baskets. These are not chicks, these are ducks. Chi-Chi leaned over and explained to Nono. At this moment, her eyes were almost in the shape of a heart. She reached out and gently stroked the ducklings' backs with heartache. She couldn't hide her love for them at all. How could she not love them? The two baskets of ducklings were a sea of yellow and orange. They obediently cried out nonstop in the baskets. Their heads were also moving up and down, one after another. They were super cute. Little yellow ducklings, just like the plastic ducklings she liked the most when she was bathing. At this moment, there were dozens of real and lively yellow ducklings in front of her. Kiki felt that her heart was about to melt. Don't touch it, it will be scared. Kiki turned her head and said to Brother Kong Kong, who was squatting beside her. It's okay. Mr. Kong Kong didn't care about the girl's feelings. He picked up the ducklings and played with them. Of course, he didn't use much strength. He just gently grabbed the ducklings' armpits and held them in his hands. Kiki didn't say anything when she saw how much Kong Kong liked the duckling, but she still looked at the trembling duckling in Kong Kong's hand nervously. She was worried that it would fall out of Kong Kong's hand. Look, it has a heart. Kong Kong pointed at the duckling and told Kiki why she had caught it. It turned out that the black spot on the duckling's head was a little different from its companions. It was in the shape of a heart. Great. I really like this one. Kiki's eyes became softer than water when she heard that. I'll give it to you then. Kong Kong pretended to be nonchalant as she placed the duckling in her sister's palm. She gave her discovery to my daughter, who was as beautiful as a daffodil. Thank you, Brother Kong Kong. Kiki replied, but she didn't have time to look at Brother Kong Kong. She was busy holding the cute duckling, and her heart was filled with love for the duckling. Hey, there's a heart. Kong Kong continued to search in the basket. At this time, Sister Pomegranate finally came downstairs with Dajuan, Xian, and Nina. All the children were staring at the white and fat eggs, and the yellow duckling in front of them. Sister. Chubby Xian came to Kiki's side and reported to her. Just now, I helped Nina put on her shoes. Nina also ran to Kiki's side and squatted down to look at the duckling happily with her sister. After hearing Xuan's words, she raised her head proudly and smiled faintly. You don't know how to put it on. Yes, it's super hard to put on. The shoes are too tight. Xian said. In any case, it was a world of difference from the tense relationship between the two children in the morning. Xian and Nina had become good friends. Okay. Children, come here. It's time to assign you today's tasks. Hearing Sister Pomegranate shout, all the children who thought that they could happily do their tasks gathered around her, and stood in a circle. They raised their heads and looked at Sister Pomegranate expectantly. Listen to what I have to say. First of all, this house isn't for free. Sister Pomegranate held back her laughter and ridiculed the program crew. She said seriously, you have to pay the rent. The audience suddenly realized that Sister Pomegranate's dress as a landlady wasn't just to scare the children. There was a deeper meaning behind it. The children's smiles when they looked at Sister Pomegranate suddenly withered like flowers that had been sunburned. A tense atmosphere spread among the children, and everyone felt very uneasy. Do you know how much a day's rent is? After Sister Pomegranate asked, the children were so depressed that they didn't dare to speak. She asked and answered her own question. 80 yuan. Only 80 yuan. Kiki reacted faster than the other children. She thought that it would be fine if her father gave her money. 80 yuan. Her father had a lot of money in his wallet. Besides, her own small passbook far exceeded this amount. Of course, Kiki didn't have any money on her, but Kong Kong looked like a rich young master. He smiled mischievously and said, 80 yuan is fine, I'll take 100 yuan. Kiki looked at her brother with admiration. She pulled Brother Kong Kong and asked, Brother Kong Kong, my papa hasn't come back yet. Can you lend me 100 yuan? I'll return it to you when my papa comes back. No, you have to sell things. You can't use your own money. Sister Pomegranate laughed and said while waving her cattail leaf fan. Then is 1,000 yuan okay? Another rich and handsome man asked. No. You have to sell things yourself. How could Sister Pomegranate let them succeed? This was originally the program crew's arrangement. Sister Pomegranate continued. You have to earn money through your own labor to pay the rent, understand? The children nodded their heads in confusion. Okay, Sister Nui. Listen to me. Sister Pomegranate began to assign tasks. She pointed to the cart with the immortal grass honey and said, You two have to go to Yuchang building to sell immortal grass honey. Kong Kong. Sister Pomegranate stretched out her cattail leaf fan and patted Kong Kong. I'll sell ducks. Boss Kong Kong's cold and elegant appearance hit a soft heart. I also want to sell ducks. Kiki grinned. She didn't want to leave these cute little creatures. Yes. Kong Kong and Kiki go to Conxia village to sell ducks. Sister Pomegranate waved her cattail leaf fan domineeringly and said, You too. Sister Pomegranate suddenly pointed to Dejun and Xian Xian, who were somewhat distracted. She held back her laughter and asked loudly, Who are you? Have you forgotten? Dejun laughed foolishly and pointed to himself. Where is he? Sister Pomegranate pointed to Xian Xian, who was standing beside Dejun in confusion. Xian Xian didn't know how to speak. He just stared foolishly at Sister Pomegranate, while Dejun pointed foolishly at Xian Xian. Sister Nina on the other side. Oh. Kong Kong was already covering her head. She was convinced by their IQ. It's Xian Xian. Kiki giggled so hard that she wanted to bend over while holding her stomach. In the end, the two silly brothers, Xian Xian and Dejun, were assigned to sell eggs in Yinshui Song. Kiki was going to sell ducklings with the cold and aloof Kong Kong. What kind of sparks would fly between them? Chapter 1224. There will be more updates today. After asking about the route, Kiki and Kong Kong each carried a basket of ducklings and set off. Although it was a big basket, and the ducklings were squeaking nonstop, the ducklings were actually very light. Even Kong Kong could easily carry them, let alone Kiki. However, Kong Kong was a boy after all, and he was a little taller than Kiki, so he walked a little faster in front. Kiki looked at the ducklings from time to time, and her heart was blooming with joy. When she looked at Brother Kong Kong again, Brother Kong Kong was already 4 or 5 meters ahead of her. Brother Kong Kong, wait for me. However, the little girl didn't dare to run. She could only call out to Big Brother Kong Kong to stop. Then she giggled and moved her long legs, trying to catch up with her brother in large strides. Kiki was afraid that the ducklings would fall out if she ran. After all, the basket was too crowded, and the ducklings were very good at jumping. She had seen them in the earthen building just now. They could jump into the basket from the ground. Do you want me to help you? Kong Kong looked at his sister walking towards him with an innocent and cute smile. He could not help but lower his head and pretend to look at the ducklings in the basket. Kiki could not hear clearly. She stopped next to Brother Kong Kong, tilted her head to look at Brother Kong Kong's face, and asked, Brother Kong Kong, what did you say? Can you carry it? I'll help you carry it. Kong Kong turned his head to the side and asked again without looking at Kiki. Kiki had seen other children looking at her shyly, and she had also seen Brother Xian Xian, who was sometimes shy and sometimes enthusiastic. However, Kiki did not care much about it. Kong Kong was a little special. How could Brother Xian Xian be shy? This was something that Kiki could not understand. Since she could not understand it, she stopped thinking about it. Although the audience was watching with great interest, Kiki did not cooperate with them. She smiled brightly, shook her head and said, No, I can do it. And so the little boy walked with my daughter for a while. Kong Kong suddenly said, we should feed them. Otherwise, the duckling will be hungry. Yes, the duckling is hungry. Kiki nodded. When they came out, they actually had a small bamboo pot on their waists. It was made of bamboo and contained food for the little yellow ducks, but she had forgotten to feed them. Therefore, they squatted down by the roadside. Kong Kong poured the food into the basket and let the ducklings fight for it. Kiki, on the other hand, was a little cuter. She imitated how her grandparents fed the chickens in her hometown. First, he clapped his hands, trying to attract the attention of the little yellow ducks, but they seemed a little indifferent. Then Kiki poured some food onto her white and tender palm. The opening of the bamboo pot was too small, so she couldn't fit her palm into it. "Duckling, it's time to eat." The little girl squatted next to the bamboo basket without paying attention to her image. Then, she pinched the duck food and poured it into the bamboo basket little by little. Wherever the food went, the little yellow ducks fought for it. "They love it." Kiki giggled. She was very happy to see this. She quickly poured out another handful of food and let the little yellow ducks fight for it. "The ducklings here haven't eaten yet." "Hee, don't worry, sister will feed you." Kong Kong raised his head and looked at Kiki. He pursed his lips, but didn't say anything. Kong Kong almost didn't say anything along the way. Kiki took care of the little yellow ducks, so she didn't complain. However, the two children were not in a hurry. Kiki fed them slowly, and Kong Kong, who had finished feeding, played with the little yellow ducks in his basket very gently. The little yellow ducks all wanted to escape from the bamboo basket, and the narrow space crowded with their own kind. They jumped up and down one after another, but they couldn't jump because there was no place to put their feet. It was very interesting. "Brother Kong Kong." Kiki raised her head and looked at Brother Kong Kong. The little girl didn't know why she was very happy. She giggled and asked, "Does it hurt?" "It doesn't hurt." She thought that Kong Kong would answer every question she asked, but she didn't expect him to be so talkative. He said, "It's very comfortable, just like a massage machine." It's true. Kiki was amused by Brother Kong Kong's words. She imitated Brother Kong Kong and put her hands on the ducklings' heads. After playing for a while, she clapped her hands and laughed so hard that the audience was worried that the little girl would fall down. "You're going to sell ducklings." Today, it was the very good choreographer sister who was with them. She saw the two children squatting and playing by the side of the road for a long time, and didn't seem to want to leave, so she reminded them. "Okay, let's go." Kong Kong was more cheerful than before. He stood up and said hello to his sister. "But I don't want to sell ducklings." Kiki stood up, but she was a little reluctant to hold the bamboo basket. She pouted and said, "I like these ducklings very much. Can I not sell them?" Kong Kong glanced at Chi-Chi. He was also hesitating. "But you have to sell ducklings to earn rent for Sister Pomegranate," the choreographer sister said. "You don't want Sister Pomegranate to be sad, right?" When Kong Kong heard this, he said in a rough voice, "Well, don't be afraid. Let's sell these ducklings. When we go back, we'll ask your father to buy you new ducklings to raise." Since Brother Kong Kong said so, Kiki had to follow him. The two of them moved quickly. It didn't take much effort for them to reach the first house and try to sell their ducklings. However, this family didn't seem to know how to show tender care for the fairer sex. Chi-Chi and Kong Kong tried their best to persuade the old man, and Kong Kong even tried to sell them as gifts in order to open up a market. However, the old man refused to budge. "Brother Kong Kong, we're going to sell ducklings. We're not giving them away," the little girl explained to Kong Kong seriously. Kong Kong was a little depressed. On the one hand, he had failed to promote his ducklings. On the other hand, he was being questioned by his little friend, and this little friend was Kiki, whom he liked very much. He disappeared a little later. On the other hand, Kiki was still full of energy. She was looking for people to promote her ducklings in the village. Of course, Chi-Chi was also defeated time and time again. She had actually been repeatedly rejected from the very beginning. How can this be? Why doesn't anyone buy the cute ducklings? Kiki pouted and asked her brother. She couldn't figure it out. Kong Kong walked in front of her and said, "I don't know. I don't want to sell ducklings anymore." Kiki's setbacks seemed to be pressuring him. The little boy frowned and couldn't relax. "Oh, I see someone in front." Kiki suddenly pointed to the front and shouted happily. She ran forward and grabbed Brother Kong Kong's hand. "Brother Kong Kong, let's go and ask." Well, as mentioned earlier, Xiaohan will add a chapter today. The reason is that the book's ban has finally been lifted at Qidian. After the previous incident, the book was implicated and was banned for almost a month. Originally, the book's results had just improved a little. Well, let's not talk about these unhappy things. It's a good thing that the ban has been lifted, so Xiaohan decided to add a chapter to share the joy with everyone, hee hee. Chapter 1225. If one were to say that Kong Kong had followed her willingly, then it would be more accurate to say that he had been dragged a few steps forward by Chi-Chi, and then followed behind her with an unwilling expression. Of course, Chi-Chi took the lead and ran over. The one thing that a young girl lacked the least was the energy of youth. However, when Chi-Chi ran over, she felt a little shy. She looked at the little big sister who was about 10 years old in front of her, and raised her hand in an attempt to greet her. "Hello, big sister." She subconsciously looked back, but found that big brother Kong Kong didn't follow her. Kong Kong was holding his duckling, shaking his head and kicking the small stones on the side of the road. He looked like he could not do this business, and had to come back quickly. "Hello, little sister." The young lady smiled. "Little sister, you're so beautiful." "Thank you. Big sister is very beautiful too." Her sister's friendly praise made Kiki beam. She also forgot the awkwardness of just meeting brother Kong Kong. Kiki did not wait for brother Kong Kong. She asked, "Big sister, do you want to buy a duckling? How much is one duckling?" The young lady smiled and asked, why did they suddenly jump to the stage of bargaining? After a few failed sales pitches, Kiki had some marketing words in her mind, but she did not have the chance to say them. Now that she was asked about the price, Kiki was a little confused. She had not thought about this problem yet. Kiki knew what money was, and she also knew that she needed money to buy things. However, Poplar Fruit had not trained her how much money to spend. If Kiki was given some time to think about it, she might be able to say something. However, at this juncture, Kiki subconsciously turned to look at brother Kong Kong. My daughter always had the same idea when she had a big brother to rely on. When Kong Kong saw Kiki turn her head, he shouted, 50 yuan for one. He did not understand and only shouted based on his feelings. However, looking at his face, the little boy was very proud that the little sister he liked wanted him. 50 yuan. Kiki repeated what her sister said. She smiled a little embarrassedly, because she also felt that 50 yuan for a duckling was a little expensive. The little girl was also doing some math problems in her heart. Kiki's shy smile was very beautiful in the eyes of the audience. She was wearing a white Mickey Mouse t-shirt like a lotus flower out of the water. Then, her shy smile was like the finishing touch, making this shy water lotus flower bloom with beautiful pink petals. 50 yuan, is that expensive? The young lady asked. Kiki embarrassedly looked at the little yellow duck in her bamboo basket and smiled shyly. How much is that? How about 20 yuan? The young lady bent down and looked at Kiki with a smile. Sure. Kiki nodded her head first, and then did some calculations in her heart. It was quite worth it, and her heart and face were overjoyed. They sold a duckling for 20 yuan. Before Kiki returned to brother Kong Kong's side, she turned around and waved the money in her hand excitedly. We have 20 yuan. The little girl didn't seem to have any intention of separating from brother Kong Kong. Kong Kong's solemn expression disappeared. Seeing that his sister had succeeded, he smiled happily. It seemed like this business could continue. Both of us have money, yay. Chi-Chi happily walked to big brother Kong Kong's side. She was grinning from ear to ear the entire way, and the little girl's voice was as clear and melodious as a wind chime in the spring breeze, making anyone who heard it feel happy. Brother Kong Kong, brother Kong Kong. Kiki happily pulled brother Kong Kong's hand and showed him the money. She said, Look, we sold a duckling for 20 yuan. President Kong Kong was a little nervous when his sister pulled his hand again. Chi-Chi's eyes were as cute as the naughty strands of hair on her forehead when she smiled, and her milk-white skin made people envious. She continued, Big brother Kong Kong, we have a total of 41 ducklings. I have 21 here, and you have 20. A duckling for 20 yuan can be sold for 840 yuan. The audience blinked their eyes. How did Kiki calculate so quickly? Then we're going to be rich. Kong Kong couldn't help but smile. No. Kiki shook brother Kong Kong's hand and said with a pout, Sister Shirlu is saying that our rent is 80 yuan, so it's 160 yuan in total. So we only need to sell 7 more ducklings. Was Kiki really 4 years old? Was she sure? Could it be that the program crew was putting on a show? The audience had a lot of questions in their hearts. However, the millions of die-hard fans of Poplar Fruit couldn't accept it. They said disdainfully, Isn't it just addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division? What's so strange about that for our Chi-Chi? When Kiki was less than 2 years old, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei had just gotten together. He uploaded a short video of Kiki memorizing the multiplication table under Fong Beibei's guidance. At that time, the little girl's silly look when she was memorizing the multiplication table had melted the hearts of many fans. There were really netizens who dug out Poplar Fruit's Weibo and said, "His stepmother is the champion of a world-class mathematics competition. With our Princess Kiki's IQ, can't she handle simple addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division?" In any case, Kiki's performance surprised the program crew and the audience. However, it was just a small episode. What everyone valued more was Kiki's outstanding performance with both beauty and wisdom. Kong Kong was a little dizzy from Kiki's words, but looking at his sister's big pleading eyes, she was so cute that he couldn't bring himself to reject her. He nodded and said generously, "Okay." However, when it came to selling the ducks, everyone, including Kiki, forgot about this number. Because of the friendly interaction with the customers and the sense of accomplishment from selling the ducklings, they became more and more enthusiastic. "Do you want a duck? Here's a loving duck." Kong Kang's main focus was the loving ducklings. In fact, these ducklings with black fluffy spots on their heads were in the shape of hearts, so Kiki didn't care. However, the loving ducklings were very popular, and many aunties were willing to buy them. When the ducklings grow up, they will become very beautiful swans. Hee. Kiki probably remembered the story of the ugly duckling that her father told her, and told the auntie and her sister a little exaggeratedly. It was unknown whether it was her story or the little girl's sweet smile that made the customers laugh. Kiki also sold a lot of ducklings. There were also some kind-hearted villagers who liked the two children's cuteness and hard work, and opened their wallets to buy the children's ducklings. There were also people who bargained with them, from 20 yuan to 5 yuan, but Kiki and brother Kong Kong, who were already full of satisfaction from selling the ducklings, didn't care. However, things didn't always go smoothly. Just as they were happily selling the ducklings, a small crisis was brewing. Could Kiki and Kong Kong smoothly solve it? Chapter 12:26. The weather wasn't on their side, and it started to drizzle. Poplar Fruit, who was making a bamboo toy for his daughter, raised his head and looked at the sky with worry on his face. He didn't know what mission his daughter was doing, but it was raining. Was she in a safe house? Poplar Fruit didn't need to worry because there was a big brother with a cold face, but a warm heart. He was holding Kiki's hand and protecting her as they walked down the slippery stone steps. Kiki was surprised at first when big brother Kong Kong suddenly held her hand. She didn't know why, but she suddenly felt like a little deer was jumping around in her heart. Of course, Kiki didn't understand the meaning behind it. But big brother Kong Kong was protecting her. Kiki was happy. She smiled sweetly at big brother Kong Kong and said, "Thank you, big brother Kong Kong." It's nothing." Kong Kong took the initiative to hold his sister's hand for the first time. He didn't expect himself to be so brave, but he still pretended to be cold and shook his head. There was a downhill path, so Kong Kong took his sister's hand and walked down quickly. His sister's hand was soft and slender. This feeling was very strange. The little boy was a little nervous. He was so nervous that he walked quickly, but he still reminded his sister to be careful. "Big brother Kong Kong, let me tell you. My papa bought me a yellow duck before, but it was fake." The two innocently held hands and laughed. This scene was too beautiful. As they laughed, Kiki suddenly turned her head and looked at Kong Kong with her big clear eyes. She asked in confusion, "Big brother Kong Kong, why are you holding my hand so tightly?" Although big brother Kong Kong's strength couldn't hurt Kiki, compared to her father's gentleness and little brother Xian Xian and big brother Dajuan's strength, she felt that it shouldn't be so strong. "I'll be like this when I'm nervous." Kong Kong's face was tense, and his voice was a little nervous. They were going downhill just now, and now he was holding his sister's hand. He didn't want to let go of her hand, afraid that his sister would find out. "Oh, okay. Hee. Kiki smiled brightly and didn't care. She shook big brother Kong Kong's hand and naively thought that it was fun. In Chi-Chi's heart, She was probably happy that she could become even better friends with Big Brother Kong Kong than before, wasn't she? Big Brother Kong Kong usually stood by the side and didn't play with them. Big Brother Kong Kong's actually also wanted to play with them. Now that she found out, hee. Her sister's smile warmed Kong Kong's heart. However, they soon arrived at a house where they could temporarily take shelter from the rain. Big Brother Kong Kong and Kiki's hands. Big Brother's SSD test SSS. TSSS's. SSS TSSTSSS plays. S. T's. S's. S. S. SSS and swimmings. Round after round, they chased each other and even chirped. It was super cute. When I take a bath at home, I also play with a yellow duck. Mine is a fat yellow duck. Kiki raised her eyebrows and smiled. Big Brother Kong Kong, next time, I'll ask Papa to take a picture for you. I stopped playing with this kind of toy long ago, Kong Kong said. Then do you want to see it or not? Chi pouted and asked a little unhappily. Kong Kong glanced at his sister, lowered his head and said softly, yes. Hee. Not long after, the rain cleared up. Kiki and Kong Kong sorted the yellow ducks and put them back into their baskets. They were a little wet, but they didn't care too much about it. Now they couldn't tell whose was. They thought that the money they earned was all together. Kong Kong even generously let Kiki keep all the money in hers bag, although each of them was wearing a bright-colored bag given by the program team. Give me 2 more, I'm strong, Kong Kong said in a manly manner. Was he really that strong? Not necessarily. However, Kiki didn't think about it at all. It felt good to be cared for by her brother. Kiki smiled sweetly at Kong Kong. Thank you, Big Brother Kong Kong. After selling a few more ducks, Kiki was still immersed in the sense of achievement, but Kong Kong suddenly remembered Kiki's request at the beginning. They should sell enough ducklings to pay the rent, and the rest of the ducklings should be left for Kiki to take home. Moreover, Kong Kong wanted one for herself. Kiki, let's count how much money we earned, okay? Kong Kong suddenly said. Count money? Kiki blinked her big eyes in confusion. Did you forget? At the beginning, you said that you would go back after selling as many ducklings as you wanted, and leave the rest for us to play with, Kong Kong said. Kiki suddenly put on a surprised expression. Her little mouth became round. She scratched her head regretfully and said, Oh, I forgot. What should we do? We've already sold so many ducklings. Looking at the 2 bamboo baskets that didn't even add up to a basket of ducklings, Kiki was so anxious that she wanted to cry. The little girl felt guilty for selling so many cute little animals for money. It's okay. We sold them. Kong Kong waved his hand and said carelessly, How about we leave them all for you to play with? Let's count the money first and see if it's enough for the 80 yuan rent. Chi pouted and followed Big Brother Kong Kong to a wall. She squatted down and pulled open the zipper of her small bag a little unhappily. Then she dug around inside and actually pulled out several handfuls of money. Wow. So much money. The Scorpio boss Kong Kong smiled happily. It was rare to see him so excited. We're rich. We're rich. Influenced by Big Brother Kong Kong, Kiki looked at Big Brother Kong Kong's silly grin and couldn't help but laugh again. She gave most of the money to Brother Kong Kong. Then the 2 children started counting the money separately. $10, $20, $5. Chi flipped through the bills one by one as she muttered the denominations of the bills. Her calculation method was different from the average person's. She had a small calculator in her heart, and she remembered everything clearly no matter where she calculated. 1, 2, 3. Compared to Kiki, Boss Kong Kong's way of counting money was refreshing. 21 yuan. Oh, I have enough money for the rent. I'm rich. Looking at President Kang's satisfied and smug look, the audience all expressed that this child was too amusing and easily satisfied. If they gave him 100 yuan notes, wouldn't Kong Kong be so happy that he would pawn them? Big Brother Kong Kong, I have 130 yuan. How much do you have? Kiki asked Kong Kong after she finished counting. I have 21 yuan. Kong Kong said happily. You have 130 yuan, and I have 21 yuan. Together we have... No. Big Brother Kong Kong, you counted wrong. Kiki didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she took the money from Big Brother Kong Kong's hands. This big brother was not as good at counting as Kiki. She should count it herself. Chapter 12:27. We have a total of 315 yuan. Kiki happily grabbed the messy money in her hands and ran to show it off to the camera. She knew how to count money, but she didn't know how to clean it up, so some money was still scattered on the ground. Kong Kong gathered the money scattered on the ground and imitated Kiki's mischievous behavior. She grinned at the camera and said, "We have 315 yuan. Kiki reminded her, "Yes, we have a total of 315 yuan. Looking at the two children going up and down one after another, sometimes facing the camera, and sometimes facing the director's sister who was playing very well, they laughed crazily to show off the money they had earned. The audience also smiled knowingly when they saw this. She was smiling now, but not long after, in front of the TV, she saw Chi-Chi squatting in front of the bamboo basket with her eyebrows drooping. She had only turned her head after the video was edited. She wanted to share her happiness with the ducklings, but then she found that one of the ducklings was lying there, motionless. At first, Kiki thought it was strange and didn't understand what was wrong with it. She even reached out to touch it, but the duckling didn't move, and its body was a little cold. Maybe it was water. Kiki suddenly thought of something terrible. Just like when she went to the pet hospital and the stray cat and dog rescue center with her father. Sometimes Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe wouldn't let Kiki see some scenes, but she would still find that some of the dogs she had named were missing. Although her father said that they had gone to a very, very beautiful heaven, Chi-Chi still understood that those very, very old dogs were actually already dead. Kiki had always understood life and death, but she preferred to live in the fairy tale that her father told her. At this moment, was she really going to face death? Although she didn't want to believe it, the little girl opened her mouth and stared at the duckling for a long time. She saw that the duckling had completely lost its vitality and was lying on all fours, motionless, and its fluffy feathers were frighteningly wet with water droplets. Kiki was completely panicked. When Kong Kong came over, Kiki looked at him helplessly. Her voice was as clear as usual, but from her eyes, one could tell that Kiki's mind was blank. One of the ducks died. Kong Kong, who had been happily talking to the director, suddenly froze. He squatted down and gently picked up the duckling to examine it. The duckling's head moved, and Kong Kong gasped and said loudly, "It's still alive." Although it was alive, the duckling's eyes were so lifeless that it looked almost like it was dead. Kong Kong was afraid that he had done something to kill the dying duckling to death, so he quickly put it back. Really? Kiki was overjoyed. She had been feeling terrible, but now she saw hope. She picked up the duckling again, but her hands were trembling. She gently stroked the duckling's fluffy feathers, but the uneasiness in her heart grew stronger. The director said, "Put it on the ground and see if it can stand up." Kiki did as she was told, but how could it stand up? The duckling was lying on the ground, and its head was also on the ground, motionless. Kong Kong looked at the director happily, thinking that the director was knowledgeable and would be able to save the duckling. However, a cruel exclamation suddenly came from the surrounding audience. "Wow, is the duck really dead?" Instantly, Kiki and Kong Kong's expressions froze. "It's too small. It caught a cold after coming into contact with water." People were talking about it. Kiki heard it and felt even worse. She suddenly felt that the sky was falling down. It was her fault that the duckling died. If she hadn't let it play in the water, it wouldn't have died. Chi-Chi couldn't hear what they were saying clearly due to the noisy discussions of everyone around her. However, the buzzing was so noisy and so sarcastic that it felt like knives were stabbing into her heart. It hurt so much. The girl held the duckling in her hands, its head drooping. She panicked and looked at Brother Kong Kong, the director, and the cameraman. No one could save the duckling. Chi-Chi's mouth widened, and she burst into tears. The golden beads that had been rolling in her eyes fell onto her arms and onto the ground. The little girl held the dying duckling in her hands and cried sadly. "Don't cry, Kiki, don't cry. It's okay. It's not your fault." The director hurried over to comfort her. At this time, Kong Kong, who was standing on the side in a daze, was also feeling uncomfortable. Chi-Chi's cry was like a signal gun, causing Kong Kong's emotions to completely explode. He pulled off the slanted bag, threw it away forcefully and shouted loudly, "Okay, I'm not buying any more ducks." Kong Kong's outburst made Kiki stop crying for a second. However, Brother Kong Kong turned around and ran out, making Kiki think that Brother Kong Kong was throwing a tantrum at her. She was already sad, but now that she felt wronged, Kiki's heart was about to break. The girl squatted down and held the dying duckling in her hands, crying her eyes out. The production crew hurriedly sent a few people to take care of Kong Kong. The director, who had the best relationship with the two children, and was also the most popular among them, was put in a difficult position. She first tried to persuade Chi-Chi, but realized that it was useless. So she could only chase after Kong Kong for the time being to see what was wrong with him. "I know you're sad. It's okay." Kong Kong was very strong when he lost his temper and didn't cry. However, after being hugged by the director, the little boy couldn't help but cry out in pain. After the director's advice, Kong Kong finally revealed the reason for his actions. It turned out that Kong Kong had also put the blame on himself. However, to him, this was the second time he had killed a duckling. Kong Kong used to have a duckling at home, but the duckling ran away and was eaten by a cat. Because he had been hurt once, and this time, it was because of himself, that he made a mistake again. Furthermore, the little sister he liked was crying so badly. Kong Kong's heart ached even more, and he felt so terrible that he couldn't breathe. While Kong Kong was crying miserably, Kiki was in the same situation. Just as the production crew was panicking, a villager stood up and said that there might still be hope if she dried the duckling's hair with a hairdryer. Kiki immediately stopped crying. She held 2 bamboo baskets with her teary eyes, and followed the kind-hearted auntie to dry the duckling's hair with a hairdryer. After the hair on its body was dried, the duckling still looked listless. Kiki could feel that its life was slipping away. Although it was passing away slowly, it wouldn't be long before the duckling died. This feeling was very mysterious, but it was very clear to Kiki that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.